Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching first part of what a Fem-Naruto received Dragon contract. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
An unidentified seal October 10th, the day the village was overrun by the Kyuubi no Yoko and left in ruins the day the Yondaime sealed the Kyuubi into a newborn child, defeating it specifically. Naruto Uzumaki, the daughter of the Yondaime the infant girl, is currently in the Hokage's office. In a crib inside the Hokage tower, the recently reinstated Sandaime Hokage is seated at the Hokage's desk. He is currently cursing his successor for abandoning him with all of this garbage. More than ever, the civilian council is demanding. People are afraid it is the lowest point of the shinobi forces. He also left his daughter under his supervision. Now the elderly man is sitting at his desk, trying to decide what to do with her. He can inform the village of the Yondaime's final wishes and her role as a container for the Kyuubi. However, the Yondaime's final wishes have some shortcomings. Why do people fear and be afraid of the Kyuubi? They will only see her as the Kyuubi itself, not as the hero the Yondaime had hoped for. His daughter will only experience pain, sorrow, sadness, and loneliness if he complies with that request. It will probably make her life a living hell. The Yondaime trusted his village too much. A man with long, spiky white hair climbed through the window and said, "Geez, I leave the village for a few days and the village has crumbled down. What the hell happened here, sensei?" He gestured to the crib on his left and said, "Your student had to seal it into his own daughter. The Kyuubi attacked just a while ago, Jiraiya. He just needed to be sure, so he said, I need you to overcheck the seal and see if it works." He didn't believe that the Yondaime was sealed. His daughter A. He approached the crib and saw a baby girl with blue eyes and blonde hair. He examined her further and found nothing that would link her to Kyuubi, but he did say, "She has her father's hair and eyes." That's strange. What's strange? Attracting the Hokage's attention. The old man simply stared at him as though he had grown a second head and said, "She doesn't have any of the Kyuubi's characteristics. All Jinchuriki have characteristics of the demon they contain, and she doesn't have anything that relates her to the Kyuubi." In the hopes that the Kyuubi isn't controlling the child, the elderly man remarked, "Maybe it has something to do with the seal." When Jiraiya examined the child's stomach, he was astounded by what he saw. He did not design this seal. He is looking at a pentagonal-shaped seal with numerous squares and circles inside. It is undoubtedly a seal, but he has never seen anything like it. The kanji for water, fire, wind, earth, and lightning were placed at either end of the pentagon-shaped seal. They all had another kanji for darkness and interlocked into the center. Each of them had a distinct elemental color, and the pentagon-shaped seal's interior was red. What sort of seal is this, though? It must be the Kyuubi's chakra. I have never seen anything like this before, and it appears that the pentagon seal is attempting to totally deplete Kyuubi's chakra. There was nothing like this on the forbidden sealing either. Whatever it is performing its function flawlessly. In order to avoid frightening the elderly man about a different seal on the child, Jiraiya said, "Well, old man, you got nothing to fear. The Kyuubi is sealed up and the seal is working perfectly. So what are you going to do with her?" Jiraiya was about to advise against it when she said, "I thought about telling the village about her status and telling them about the Yondaime's wishes, but decided not to go along with that." Jiraiya learned of his student's desires and his folly, saying, "Good choice, old man. The village is most likely to tear her so apart." His concern for the villagers' safety overshadowed his own daughter's safety. "So what are you going to do with her? And don't say take her with you. I don't know anything about looking after a child, especially if they are a newborn. He named you her godfather and Kushina named Tsunade as her godmother. Since you can't look after a newborn child and Tsunade is not here, then I have no choice other than to send her to an orphanage. Telling the village of her heritage will most likely have assassins after her, and I will not have that. It would be best if I give her her mother's name." Jiraiya nodded with agreement. "Jiraiya, I want you to find Tsunade and tell her about her godchild. I just hope she decides to take her and raise her as her own." The elderly shinobi nodded and acknowledged that the woman was in pain over her loss. "Yeah, if she returns and takes her as her wand, then she will take her outside of the village. She won't stay long after what happened to her fiancé copyright and little brother." The toad sage nodded and walked out of the room after giving the young girl in the crib one last look. "Give her the news of this and don't press her into raising little Naruto here. If she doesn't wish to raise her, then I will do what I can to make her happy and a strong kunoichi. All I can hope for is that seal will endure. I'll have to find out what that thing is." He went out the window and began looking for a potential mother who was extremely strong and had a very short fuse. When he finds her, all he can hope for is survival. Knowing that there was a child in the facility, the elderly man had his unlit pipe in his mouth. He went to personally deliver the girl to the orphanage and inform the village about the Kyuubi's death, leaving out a lot of details. A significant battle would take place inside Naruto Uzumaki's mindscape if someone with the capacity to see in minds like the Yamanaka used it on the young character. What's going on in her head? The Kyuubi no Yoko and the other 6 big, unidentified figures were the only ones. Why are they fighting? I'm not sure. The Hokage only knows that the young girl in his arms is sleeping soundly while a fierce battle rages inside of her. The hatchling's real birth Jiraiya has been looking for Tsunade for 6 years. Actually, it's more like 3 years. After 3 years of looking for Tsunade, Jiraiya gave up and convinced the elderly man to raise his goddaughter himself. Believing it would be simpler for him to care for the young child, the elderly man permitted it because he believed he was fulfilling his responsibility to care for his student's child. If he was unable to locate Tsunade, he might as well assign Jiraiya to look after the young Naruto. Those who claim that raising a young girl is simple should have a Rasengan shoved up their asses. The young girl was hyperactive, eager to learn, and a stamina freak. He was grateful for the last one. Jiraiya spent most of his time caring for young Naruto rather than conducting research. When Naruto was 5 years old, she developed an interest in learning the ninja arts, and Jiraiya began teaching her. She was struggling to learn certain forms and styles of taijutsu. He allowed her to create her own because it appears that she wasn't tuned into using them. She spent some time honing the postures her body was adopting, and eventually she created her own look. Jiraiya recognized her style very well. Why? Because her mother used that style. The position of the dragon Naruto's mother is known as the Crimson Dragon because of that style. By incorporating fire manipulation into her dragon stance using various katas, she developed her own stance. Jiraiya only recalls that after seeing Kushina's taijutsu in its full force, he stopped staring at her. In any case, he then began teaching her how to control her chakras. He chose to postpone her training because everything went smoothly with the leaf holding technique. She appears to be picking things up a little too quickly. After she turned 6 and he discovered Tsunade, everything was wonderful. Oh no, who knew her seal was misbehaving? Until she passes away, it should be put on hold. In addition to having a high fever, Naruto also has swollen eyes, trouble breathing, and an infected ear. When Jiraiya was taking care of Naruto, he looked up the seal and tried to find out anything he could about the seal she had on her stomach. As it happens, the seal is the root of all of this, and it has changed somewhat over the past 6 years. The kanji for light has taken the place of all the kanji for fire, water, earth, wind, lightning, and darkness. Naruto is suffering as a result of whatever changes the seal has undergone. He started to question whether the seal was killing the Kyuubi or if there was another reason for its disappearance of red chakra. Jiraiya simply moaned at his situation. He did everything in his power to raise her, as he was supposed to. For Kami's sake, he even put off doing his research. He couldn't let his student's daughter die of illness, so he said, "That doctor better hurry getting here." He recalled how her small-time antics used to frighten him to no end. He recalled the first time she referred to him as Jiraiya-sensei, or simply Senin, without the addition of arrow or pervert to those she believes are worthy, like him. The young girl is an honorable person. He focused on developing Naruto into a strong kunoichi. From that day on, I'm going to increase your training after this is over. At that point, there were several knocks on the door. He went to answer the door and let the doctor in, saying, "Speak of the devil." He was able to see the doctor and her assistant clearly at that point. "You?" Jiraiya and the doctor exclaimed simultaneously. The doctor said, "Damn it, pervert. We are not your damn housemaids." Jiraiya knows this to be Tsunade. The large breast is sufficient evidence. Who among the elemental nations has breasts larger than Tsunade's? After all, who, really, has larger breasts than Tsunade? In an attempt to soothe Tsunade, Jiraiya remarked, "I actually have someone who needs a doctor." Tsunade. Tsunade turned away and left the room with her assistant following her, asking, "Really now, does she need a shot so she won't get any disease from you?" Tsunade was stopped in her tracks when Jiraiya said, "This is serious, Tsunade. She's my goddaughter." Jiraiya waved her and her helper into the room to see how the young child was doing. "Goddaughter?" she asked. She went into doctor mode as soon as she walked into the bedding area after seeing the little girl's state. While her assistant went to get a cloth and water to cool her fever, she performed medical jutsu to heal her swollen throat and asked, "Jiraiya, who exactly is this child?" Jiraiya dropped a world-destroying bomb on Tsunade, saying, "Naruto Uzumaki. She is my student's daughter and Jinchuriki of Kyuubi no Yoko. She is my goddaughter and you are her godmother." As she continued talking about the girl's ear infection, Tsunade asked, "Who made me her godmother?" He saw Tsunade's assistant re-soak the cloth and apply it to Kushina's forehead, saying, "That would be Kushina." After repairing the swollen eyes, Tsunade walked over to Jiraiya, prepared to scold him for failing to look for her. "Why didn't you come look for me?" she exclaimed. Tsunade stopped herself from beating the pervert to death, saying, "I did. For 3 years I searched for you and every time I got close to you, you vanished." Tsunade recalled the time she thought someone was looking for her and assumed they were department collectors, only to discover it was Jiraiya. She can at least keep her word to Kushina. I suppose I can take her off your hands now that you have found me. In his ninja career, Jiraiya has saved his life numerous times. That won't be necessary. The old man has given me custody to raise and train her to become a ninja. Jiraiya felt the urge to flee and hide in a remote cave. Tsunade was correct in a few ways, but it goes too far to criticize him for doing his research before caring for Naruto. You can't be serious about raising her. Do you know anything about raising a girl? And you probably spend more time doing your so-called research than spend your time looking after Naruto. In a matter of fact, I have been teaching her personally, and not once did I go do my research. Jiraiya responded. Yes, he occasionally conducted research, but Naruto was focusing on her own personal training at the time. She truly is independent when it comes to creating her own taijutsu styles, he discovered. When Jiraiya does something more significant than his research, hell will freeze over. That's a loud of bull, and good job raising her when she is this sick. They have no idea that what was once a raging conflagration has turned into a blizzard Arctic. Jiraiya showed Tsunade her seal, which was beginning to dissolve itself, and said, I've been raising her just fine, until her seal acted up and was probably the cause of her condition. What the? The mindscape of Naruto. When Naruto sensed chilly winds and water falling on her, she began to stir. She felt the ground tremble. As she opened her eyes, she noticed that wealthy, traditional people lived in an old-fashioned house. When she looked up, as the rain and hail pounded down on her, Naruto thought to herself, I might as well go inside. A mountain that resembles a volcano is erupting and burning the surrounding area. As she glanced to her left. Fortunately, I live far away. Looking farther to the left, she noticed a deteriorating rocky plain. Strange, she saw a raging ocean with numerous whirlpools and maelstroms to her right. She thought the waves were enormous, but they weren't large enough to reach the house on the high cliff around her. A storm is pelting her with hail and water, and in the distance, lightning is undoubtedly striking. It's a strange place. She quickly identified the house as belonging to a high clan. After entering, recognizing the doors with open windows and the rice paper walls, she notices that the wooden floor is smooth and polished, and that the walls have a lot of empty shelves. Naruto read the message that appeared to be a motto written on the wall. Remain in control and let other people do what they want. You are not weak because of this. Regulate your emotions and adhere to life's rules. Others are not necessarily stronger because of this. That's really deep. Wow. As Naruto considered it, he noticed a second message next to it that said, rules. Concentrate on conditioning and training the body. Keep your honor and be righteous. Honor your teacher and show respect for your parents. Be truthful with others and loyal to your friends. That sounds accurate. Naruto continued to look around the house and noticed something that she should have noticed as soon as she walked in, not realizing that someone else was abiding by her rules. A woman sitting on a pillow near a tea table in the center of the room was sipping tea, but Naruto failed to notice her. She had on one of those ostentatious, pricey kimonos. It had a red obi and was white with red leaves as decorations. Given the kimono's curves, her slender arms, and her slightly pale skin, Naruto can see that she was moderately developed. She had shiny white hair that reached her thighs. If she stood up, the only makeup Naruto could see on her face was the red eyeliner. The woman's calm voice made you relax and feel secure. I've been waiting for you. Naruto, please have a seat and enjoy the tea. Similar to a mother. According to Naruto, her eyes had a cat-like slit and were like snow. As she sat on a pillow and examined the tea closely, Naruto questioned, who are you and where am I? She had never had tea before. The woman, now known as Tia, took a sip of her tea and observed Naruto's appearance. I have many names, but you can call me Tia-san or Tia for now, and we are in your mind. I can see that she is beginning to change as Naruto's once blonde hair turned white and her serene sky-blue eyes turned piercing blue. Tia pondered. Neither these nor the other changes that are taking place were noticed by Naruto. Well, when I remain inside her, that's what occurs. She might have electrifying yellow hair, fiery red hair, or bright blue hair. If the others remained inside her, Tia considered how she would appear if the others were inside of her. My mind? Tia asked as she snapped out of her reverie and recalled the small hatchling before her. Without revealing to her the raging battle that had been going on inside of her for 6 years, Tia said, yes, this is your mind. As you can see from outside it that it is really hectic right now. They had to call me in to put an end to it after 6 years of fighting. She moaned to herself about her situation. At the very least, they ought to call me right away. Most likely, they wanted the girl all to themselves. Naruto pointed out the window and said, that is my mind. There is no way that I am that disturbed or insane. She is putting it that way, not quite, but close enough. The young girl's assertion of her mind made Tia suppress her laughter. As he performed the forbidden puppy dog eyes jutsu, Naruto asked, is there any way I can fix my mind? I'm sorry, Girl, I've seen this jutsu so many times that I'm no longer affected by it. Tia pondered whether Naruto was prepared to repair the catastrophe outside. There is a way to fix it, but it will be a difficult path. Naruto begged the woman. How? Please tell me. While Naruto was giving him the "What the hell are you talking about?" expression, Tia said, "You have to master the 5 elements to calm your mind. The 5 elements are wind, fire, water, earth, and lightning. You get this so far?" Naruto wondered who this person was and asked, "Yeah, but why would I need to master the elements, and why is this connected to my mind?" Good question. As you've seen outside, the wind is creating hurricane-level winds, lightning going off every second, the volcano erupting and destroying the land. The earth is decaying and the ocean is raging. To stop these you must master or have a level of control to cease the decaying earth, stop the volcano, and calm the winds. You understanding so far? Tia clarified. Kyuubi. Damn you, he caused as much harm as he could to the girl's ability to control the weather. Tia nodded her head and said, "So, you're saying I need to master the elements to calm my mind?" As she waited for the hatchling to pop the bubble, Tia remarked, "But there is a problem. You won't be able to master the elements. In fact, no one can master the elements." In a panic, Naruto yelled, "What, are you saying that I will be insane for the rest of my life?" With such a fear, even though she isn't crazy, children frequently misinterpret things. Tia calmed the young girl a little by saying, "First, you are not insane." Naruto took notice of the statement. "Secondly, you will need help from the other dragons to master their element." "Dragons?" Tia said, unsure of whether to reveal the truth just yet. "Yes, there are 5 element dragons that will help you master their element." "Should I call me a few minutes before you get here and tell her that the 6 element dragons have been fighting Kyuubi inside her for 6 years? While fighting Kyuubi, Tia considered what would happen if she told her that they were leaking as much chakra into her system as possible. No, I should keep the information about the 6th dragon to myself because it's too soon to tell her about them, not to speak of me. Naruto asked confidently, "How do I get them to help me master the elements?" Tia pulled out a scroll from beneath the table and said, "Just condition your body and focus your mind, that is, train yourself to control an element to a certain level that I think is good enough until you take the test. No one has signed this in such a long time. This is the summoning scroll for dragons. This scroll is different from the other scrolls that are known in your village. This scroll has 6 boss dragons. To summon the 5 elemental dragons you must pass the test." Naruto questioned, "What is this test? Do I have to fight the bosses?" When Tia sealed those dragons away for disobeying their rules, she recalled, "The test is to see how you are able to fight in a battle against the tyrant dragons. Every rule. If you are able to defeat a tyrant dragon, then the elemental dragon will allow you to summon them. Once you summon the boss dragon with a certain element, they will give you a fraction of their power to you." Tia nodded her head and said, "That's how they will help me master the elements. What about the 6th dragon, and why is that one not an elemental dragon?" Tai recalled how obstinate that bastard of a dragon is. "The 6th dragon won't be available to you until you defeat the 5 tyrants and have a fraction of the elemental dragon's power inside you, and the 6th dragon will have to see if you're worthy enough to control him. He is honorable and will honor his word if Naruto passes his test, but if I know him well, he will stop at nothing to make her fail. Anyways, sign the scroll with your blood and that will do it." The worn-out scroll was taken by Naruto. When she opened it, she saw a written name on the next entry to sign, but it was so faded that she could not see it. Ignoring it, she signs the scroll. "Okay. Now what?" Naruto asked, observing Tia roll up the scroll and place it back beneath the table. Naruto nodded her head as Tia went on, saying, "You won't be able to summon right now, but later, and remember that you need to offer some of your blood to summon the dragons, okay?" Awaiting the look of surprise, Tia said, "Now I am going to explain to you about your new body." "I see. Wait a minute, what did you do to me?" "It's there." In the hotel room again, as Jiraiya explained to Tsunade how he had been raising Naruto up to this point, she inquired, "So you have been teaching her chakra control and helped her develop her own taijutsu style that Kushina had started off with?" Tsunade's angry expression was not noticed by Jiraiya, who stated, "Yes, till now I will up her training with chakra control and put a weight seal on her to help her speed, stamina, and endurance." Tsunade expressed her disapproval of having a disabled goddaughter due to the pervert's training, saying, "I will not have her trained so soon at such a young age. With that kind of training she will have some problems later on with her body. She needs balance in her life. She will need someone to help her become a woman too. How will she have a family if all she knows about is being a ninja?" Jiraiya negotiated with Tsunade, and he is aware that opposing her would be equivalent to removing Kakashi's mask. "Well, you can teach her some of that. Hell, you can teach her some medical jutsu if she's interested. Once she's strong enough I will be taking her back to Konoha to become a ninja." "You are not taking her back to Konoha," Tsunade exclaimed, recalling how that village caused her to lose her loved ones. Tsunade stopped talking when he said, "So, you are going to take her away from her home against her will?" Jiraiya recalled her statement when she took her out of the village when he first adopted her. "Naruto wants to go back to the village when she gets strong enough," she said. "I will become strong enough to protect my village from anyone and I will become the next Hokage." Naruto said it is her dream to become the Hokage. Tsunade begs Jiraiya not to take her back to the village, saying, "That village will get her killed." Jiraiya, "It killed the fourth Hokage, your prized student." Jiraiya knew how blinded he was with his village and was unaware of the consequences of the battle, but he said, "That may be so, but my student sacrificed himself to save his village. He sacrificed his daughter to protect that village." Tsunade doesn't understand how a man can bind a demon to his own child. Jiraiya recognizes the "explain or die" expression on Tsunade's face. "Yes, I know that and I think I know why." Jiraiya turned to face Naruto, or more specifically, the spot where her seal used to be. Minato sealed the Kyuubi in her for a reason. He knew that there is someone that is interested in her from the moment he sealed the Kyuubi in her. Tsunade noticed the little girl's new appearance and asked, who exactly would be interested in Naruto? What the hell happened to her? The mindscape of Naruto to Tia's relief, Naruto began to calm down after her outburst. The same question she had previously asked, but a little more composed, was posed by Naruto. "So what did you do to me? How can I tell her that she is a living descendant who once had dragon blood in her veins and then used the Kyuubi's chakra to restore the blood's strength to its previous level?" Tia came up with a way to make sense of it. Tai reflected. "Your body had actually made the changes on its own. Tell her it's a bloodline, please, that usually works." A little perplexed, Naruto questioned, "My what now?" In the hopes that Naruto would believe it, Tai explained, "Your bloodline activated and I am here to help you with your changes that would explain the disaster outside and the many empty shelves in this room." Naruto purchased the bloodline story and inquired, "So what exactly is this bloodline called?" Naruto began to listen as she described her ancestry, saying, "It doesn't have a name, but it relates to dragons. Your skin has become like a dragon's. The skin molecules have become scale-like to match a dragon. That would mean that it will become hard to cut your skin, but it is not impenetrable, so you better not rely on it hoping that a blade won't cut your skin. The older you get, the stronger your skin will become." "So my skin is like hard to cut?" Naruto nodded her head in agreement, saying, "Yes, think of your skin as armor and there are weapons and ways to go around that armor, so you better learn to avoid getting hit and not rely on it. The next one is your senses. You can smell things no one else can smell and hear things that no one else can hear, and you can sense people from great distances with practice." She repeated her nod. "The next one is your eyes." When Tai simply left that section hanging, Naruto questioned, "What about me eyes?" Naruto began to pay attention to this conversation. "Let's just leave that for later until you're old enough to use it. Your next one is the one you will need the most, the control of the elements. As you know that you are able to use all 5 elements, and let's not get to light and dark just yet. Once you are able to master these elements, you can use the sub-elements." Sub-elements? The ability to combine 2 elements, like combine earth and fire to get metal, wind and earth to get sand, water and earth to get wood, wind and lightning to get storm, water and wind to get ice, earth and lightning to get crystal, fire and water to get steam, and wind and fire to get plasma. Tai talked to Naruto about sub-elements. She will need years to use all of those, and when she masters at least 4 of them, that is, until she masters the 5 elements, which typically takes about 60 years, she will be 132. Should I tell her that after she turns 18, she will no longer age? No. That should be a surprise, Tai pondered, and when Naruto learned that she could learn sub-elements, her eyes glowed. With stars still in her eyes, Naruto asked, "I will be able to learn those?" Given that her ancestor was over 500 years old at the time and it took him years to master all the elements, Tai reflected, "Yes, because of this bloodline, you will be able to control those 5 elements a lot easier. After he mastered them all, I only hope she won't make the same error he did." Tai told the girl who was beginning to fade away, "Anyway, you better start your training to become the strongest you can be because you are about to wake up. Oh, do a summon once you get the chance." Before she vanished, Naruto uttered, "All right. I'm going to become the next Hokage and the strongest kunoichi in my village." The girl's attitude only made Tai smile, so she got up from her chair and moved to the closest window overlooking a valley. "We spent a millennium correcting that man's error. You are the last member of your clan, and we had to seal away your ancestor's bloodline because he developed a god complex." She glanced at what remained of the Kyuubi across the valley. "Although you fought hard, you fulfilled your mission." Tai reflected that in order to eliminate the Kyuubi itself and unleash Naruto's bloodline powers, she would need to use Kyuubi's chakra. Humans refer to it as killing 2 birds with 1 stone, I believe. Returning to the hotel room as she completed diagnosing Naruto's changes, Tsunade remarked, "So you have no idea why her hair is white or why her skin is getting hard? It's probably a bloodline that would explain why she has a body fever that turned her skin hard as a rock," Jiraiya replied. "I guess." She began to awaken when she heard Naruto stirring in her slumber. She made some pop noises, stretched, and yawned. She made a pop sound from her neck and then said, "That's the spot." When she finally woke up, she asked, "How long was I out, Jiraiya?" Jiraiya gave Naruto a glass of water, which she quickly downed, and said, "You had a high fever with some infection in your ears and a swollen throat. You were out for a few days, kid." Without observing the drop in temperature, the tick mark on the so-called broad's head, the whimpering woman and pig, or Jiraiya preparing to jump out of the window, Naruto asked, "Who's the broad?" When Naruto heard Knuckles cracking toward the broad, she felt compelled to write her will but was unsure of what to write. The broad cracked her knuckles and said, "Who are you calling broad, brat?" with a great deal of hate in her voice. She was actually preparing to flee for her life, and the tick mark on the broad's head that was shouting charge was a good sign to her to leave the room immediately. Jiraiya was astute enough to grab her and Shunshin out of the room when Naruto said, "I was just asking your name, no need to get offended." The angry broad yelled, "Get back here, you damn brat," as her pig and assistant whimpered at the sense of the murderous intent she was giving off. At a safe distance after escaping Tsunade's wrath, Jiraiya slumped against a tree and said, "I don't know if you are the bravest kid I know or you are still having a fever." When she felt that wave of murderous intent, Naruto asked, "Who is she anyways?" as she slumped down beside Jiraiya. Jiraiya looked down at the girl and said, "That my child is a woman you will be running away from the rest of your natural life called Tsunade." He would begin increasing her training. She was holding a pig, which made Naruto wonder, and who was the other woman and why was she holding a pig? He didn't mind answering her questions, saying, "That was her assistant named Shizune and the pig is their pet called Taunton. I think she's still learning." She got up and walked to a clearing, saying, "I see." Jiraiya looked up at Naruto and said, "Hey sensei." Naruto inquired, "What are the hand seals for the summoning jutsu?" It wouldn't show her or ask, "Why do you want to know?" since she didn't sign a contract, showing her wouldn't be harmful. Innocently, Naruto said, "Just wondering." Jiraiya said, "All right, here are the seals." Naruto practiced the seals repeatedly until she felt prepared. She bit her thumb, performed the hand seals, and slammed her palm to the floor, saying, "Okay, let's give it a shot. Summoning jutsu." Jiraiya snapped, "That's not possible without a contract." With a fish-like mouth as the smoke dispersed, they waited for something to show up. It wasn't until it appeared that Naruto realized it was a dragon. Naruto and Jiraiya were completely taken aback by the appearance of Dracula, a lizard-shaped dragon that rose from the smoke. It was a female white dragon the size of a lizard, with silver-slitted eyes, small horns, and flowing whiskers. Its gray fins extended from its head to its spine and tail. To indicate her presence, she waved her hands in a certain direction. "The great and powerful Tiamat has been summoned and is ready to take on some action. Just say the word and I'm there," she said. Naruto politely requested the dragon's attention by saying, "Excuse me." She clenched her fist and shook them in the air to demonstrate, "No, hold there, girl, let me finish anyone who harms my summoner. Vengeance will be mine." She began to gurr at something after saying something about anger. Naruto called out to the small dragon, "Hey," and managed to get its attention. "Who are you?" "I apologize. It's been a long time since I was called to this realm. It's me, Tai." She approached Naruto and slithered up to her shoulder. Shocked that she had this lizard-shaped dragon inside of her, Naruto remarked, "Tai, that woman in my mind is you." She gestured to her tiny hatchling body and said, "Yep, the only way for me to be outside of you is to be in this small form." She began prodding the lizard, saying, "So you had to transform into a lizard to help me." She did the tongue thing after saying, "Dragon, dragon, dragon, I don't do that tongue thing." With a neutral expression, Naruto said, "Rig." After he recovered from his shock at Naruto calling forth a dragon, Jiraiya made the decision to enter. "So you had the dragon summoning scroll." Naruto recounted her encounter with the dragon Tai and said, "Yeah, this is Tai. She was the one that was telling me about my bloodline." As he was informed of her changes and her objective, Jiraiya questioned, "So you have those abilities, right? Well, looks like we can start with the heavy stuff with you training since your new body can handle the strain." As Tai approached Jiraiya and gestured for him to approach, Naruto pumped up her arms and said, "Yup, and I will become a powerful kunoichi in no time." The only thing she said that Jiraiya needed to hear to relax was, "The Kyuubi is no more." She put her hand on the young girl's shoulder and said, "Hey Naruto, let me show you a trick that you were able to do." Naruto followed instructions to, "Take a deep breath and hold it and keep it there until he has this burning feeling in your lungs and release it." She did so until she experienced the burning sensation. She was terrified by what transpired next. She exhaled flames, destroying the space in front of her. After exhaling that lung of fire, she closed her mouth and covered it with her hands, allowing Jiraiya to see smoke emerging from her nose and mouth. Teaching her how to use her dragon abilities will be a lot of fun. As she watched Naruto inflict damage, Tai pondered, "Indeed, I can now be myself without being a royal dragon." The dragons of tyrants. 5 more years have passed since Naruto began her training and let her furry flames loose in the forest as promised. Jiraiya started to increase Naruto's training. It was challenging for her at first to wear those weight seals on her clothes. Tia then began teaching her how to work with the element and chakras. Since this was all new to her, things were moving slowly, but she began to notice. Tia had said that Naruto would require a sword after her 4th year. To Naruto's dismay, Jiraiya simply bought her a sword and instructed her to practice diagonal, vertical, and horizontal swings 1,000 times. After that, her arms felt like they were about to give out. After the 7th week, she adjusted to it. She spoke with Shizune, Tsunade's apprentice. When she was 7 years old, she was Naruto's big sister, and Tsunade was never present. She mostly drank or gambled, and she missed seeing Naruto in person. Naruto received a crash course in medical jutsu and human anatomy from Shizune. She is an excellent educator. Naruto can now control her dragon breath much more easily and with greater speed and force. Naruto is already at master level and has a strong affinity for using fire. As a result of exhaling fire, she gained some degree of control over every element, but she had the most control over water. She has the ability to use the hydrogen molecules in the air to create water out of thin air. Her ability to conjure water out of thin air still requires a great deal more focus, indicating that her comprehension of water manipulation has reached its limit. She has very developed skin. She was hit by one of Tsunade's punches, which is the only thing that could harm her. She began to admire Jiraiya for enduring such a vicious blow. After that, one high-level techniques, chakra-powered attacks, and element manipulation attacks are some additional things that could hurt her. Jiraiya had to instill in Naruto the idea that she shouldn't rely on her skin, to stay away from any attacks that could be prevented, and to be cautious that an attack that would cause her pain wouldn't cause her too much harm. She isn't quite accustomed to wielding a sword at the moment, and her kenjutsu is rated between mediocre and up. She doesn't have any genjutsu. Although Jiraiya hasn't begun teaching her genjutsu, he has taught her how to cancel them. If that isn't enough, Tia is essentially inside of her in order to assist Naruto. Overall, Naruto is currently at a high level of Chunin. Although she has Chunin taijutsu, her strength is simply monstrous and not as monstrous as Tsunade's. She has Jonin level chakra control and mediocre element manipulation skills for lightning and earth, high skill for wind, and mastery over fire and water. She is currently dressed in a white battle kimono. The clothes were chosen by Tai herself. She wore a white kimono with red leaves on the right sleeve and a fire pattern on the left. Her arms were adorned with red gauntlets. She wore an outer kimono with some armored padding over her chest and a mesh shirt underneath. She wore battle boots on her feet, which were covered by the kimono, and red padding on the side of her hips. The leg portion of her kimono was red from the fire, and the entwining leaves. The handle of her katana was on her right side, and it was strapped behind her back. She almost seems as though she was prepared for combat, and she is. The pervert, the child, and a Lizarda, a Dragona, are now on their way to locate a place to meditate. Naruto groaned as she sat in a lotus position and asked, "Why are we in a shrine of all places?" "We are going to start your water element test, so stop complaining and start meditating. We will do the fire element test after you pass the water test and practice with the water element," Tia said while standing in front of her. "You want to watch Jiraiya?" Jiraiya sat in front of Naruto in the same position as her and said, "Sure, I need to see how these fights are and see how I can improve her training." Tai began chanting to bring Jiraiya to Naruto's mind, saying, "Brace yourself, Jiraiya. If you are not in a state of mind to travel to another mind, you might die." "What?" Jiraiya's mind entered Naruto's as he heard the die part, panicking. The mindscape of Naruto. After 6 years, the place appeared slightly better. It's definitely not raining or hailing without the hurricanes, maelstroms, and whirlpools. The ocean is still raging. The earth has stopped deteriorating and is not trembling. The wind has calmed down. The volcano was only smoking, and the lightning is only flashing every few minutes. Overall, the last time Naruto visited, it was better. Naruto surveyed her thoughts and remarked, "Wow, this place is calmer than it was 5 years ago." As if her mental state couldn't get any worse, Jiraiya asked, "Really, what did it look like back then?" While both Jiraiya and Naruto shuddered at the thought of the power of that punch, Naruto shuddered at the thought of what it would feel like. She was unaware that Jiraiya shared her thoughts. Think of the apocalypse in your case. Think what would happen if Tsunade unleashed all her chakra into one punch. So what happens now? Jiraiya and Naruto turned to see the small lizard, but they saw the woman in Naruto's head instead. You start the test? Jiraiya immediately committed the image of Tia to memory. Tia gestures to Jiraiya, who is assessing her, saying, I see he has his moments. Naruto said to herself, it happens once in a while, but he still does those books he writes. Just give him some time. He'll stop, I hope. Naruto then turned to face Tia and noticed that she was brandishing a katana. What's with the sword? She asked in jest. This wonderful blade, and gave it to Naruto. That is one of my personal favorite blades I have. You will have to figure out her name on your own, Naruto replied to Tia. If she decides to make you her master, that is. As Naruto continued to examine the katana, Tia reflected that the handle was white with crimson diamond patterns running down. The guard was shaped like a dragon's head, and the sheath was silver with a white dragon on it. She hands Naruto the katana and then unsheaths it, saying, this will be your sword if you survive the test or battle, whatever you call it. She thought it was lovely. It reflected a piercing light and was identical to her sheath. When Jiraiya had completed programming Tia's body into memory, he exclaimed, so what exactly are these tests? Tia began to move toward the rock slopes beside the ocean. Like I said before, they are battles to test your skills in the elements or just a plain-out fight. You will be up against a tyrant dragon. They are not as strong as the boss dragons, but they are strong and have special abilities. The dragon you are fighting is not really a dragon in my point of view. As she straps the katana to her back and follows Tia to the ocean, Naruto asks, what is a dragon in your point of view, and why aren't we heading towards the volcano? I do have near master over fire as well. As Tia paused in the middle of the rocky plain and gestured for Jiraiya to back off, she said, dragons are creatures that can fly in my books and must follow our rules. This creature doesn't know how to fly, but it is actually quite powerful on land. The only reason it is a dragon, because of its special ability. The reason we are near the ocean is because you will need the water element to take the fire test. Naruto had to agree with gaining more control over water and using it against the fire tyrant. A rough rash results from fire burns. A little apprehensive of what she would be facing, Naruto inquired, what kind of special ability does this water tyrant dragon have? Tai raised her left hand as she began to condense the chakra into a ball in her hand. While channeling it, Tia shot her left hand toward the ocean, and the condensed chakra made contact with the water. If you pass this test, you will receive its techniques, but I am afraid you won't acquire its special ability, because you'll find out. It was quiet as she walked off the battlefield. Tia advised Naruto to aim for the body. After taking out her new katana, Naruto assumed a ready stance. She kept waiting until she noticed something emerging from the sea. As it approached land, Naruto had to acknowledge that she could finally see its head emerge from the water. She had never seen a dragon so strange. It had the largest ass eyes she had ever seen, dark purple skin, and a deformed jaw that could open to an unimaginable depth. Its body then revealed itself, and it was large. The neck and tail of the damn thing were both very long. She would have to estimate that it was the size of a two-story building if she had to guess. Please tell me you're joking, Naruto said, turning to face Tia. To her dismay, she saw her shake her head no. She glanced in Jiraiya's direction and saw him looking just as she did. Jiraiya exclaimed, what the hell is that thing? In shock at the creature's size and appearance. As the battle was about to begin, Tia remarked, that is the water tyrant dragon Hydra. The creature was looming over Naruto, obstructing whatever light the land was providing, and she was backing away. She was already wishing she hadn't taken the test. Nervously, Naruto made a series of quick hand gestures and said, hee hee hee. Naruto yelled, water style, water-piercing dragon missile. This water dragon was not your typical water dragon missile. It had a spike-like mouth and nose pointing outward. It is far more powerful than standard water dragon missiles and was one of the techniques Tia taught her when she had some control over water. The attack struck the mutilated creature, leaving it confused but unharmed with a frustrated, oh come on. Naruto sidestepped the creature's barrage of lunged bites and claw swipes. On the sidelines, Jiraiya shouted, keep it up, girl. As she watched Naruto flee the creature and dodge blows, Naruto ducked under the dragon Hydra's lunging bite and cut off its head. Jiraiya shouted, that a girl? You have this test in the bag, and advanced on Naruto until he was facing her. Tia sighed at Naruto's unidentified situation and remarked, I told her to aim for the body. She was about to say, thanks Jiraiya, when she heard a twitching sound behind her, and Jiraiya began to back away. This can't be good. Naruto turned to see Hydra's twitching corpse, which began to spasm violently before, much to her horror, Hydra rose to her feet. Naruto moaned. How the hell is that possible? As she glanced over Jiraiya and saw him fleeing, Naruto simply shivered at her. Sensei, he left me. The twitching sound was growing more intense. The area of the neck that Naruto had cut off began to bubble as Hydra's body stood up, and to her utter horror, Hydra regenerated its head with an additional head on top of the original. Seriously? What the hell? Naruto exclaimed as he began to run while both heads attempted to bite her. As he caught his breath after running away, Jiraiya asked, is that its special ability? Tia watched as Naruto leapt on one of the Hydra's heads, impaled its head with her sword, and leapt away as one bit her, but it bit the dead head instead. Sadly, yes, Hydra has the ability to regenerate its head. Jiraiya was about to rejoice when one of Hydra's heads tore off the dead head and two more replaced it. At least she got one. Tia nodded and couldn't help but worry about Naruto as Jiraiya stated, this will be difficult for her. Naruto persisted in avoiding the 5 heads onslaught. As the battle went on, she soon began chopping off heads to see how well it could regenerate. Naruto proceeded to cut off more heads, but more kept emerging from the body, and it managed to fit on that body somehow. Jiraiya, growing a little tired of seeing the dragon repeatedly regenerate its heads, yelled at Naruto, God damn it, kid, enough with the head slicing. Naruto moved away from Hydra for a while. That's it, she exclaimed as she stood in front of them, keeping a safe distance. No more little nice girl, she exclaimed, then directed her greatest dragon breath to the altered dragon. After taking a deep breath, Hydra's skin began to peel off as it began to flail about in the flames, completely engulfed by them. Huh? How do you like that? Hydra was still standing and appeared considerably more distorted than before as the flames began to extinguish when she saw the creature. Naruto held her stomach as tightly as she could and said, huh, that was a bad idea. The skin, she saw, was almost brittle. She quickly sealed her hands and sheathed her katana. Naruto yelled, water style. Exploding water shockwave. As she spit out a lot of water and used her water manipulation skills to make more water appear in the surrounding area. Jiraiya wondered what Tia meant when she said, she figured it out. Tia was observing Naruto making water in the area. As Jiraiya realized what Naruto was doing, Tia remarked, Hydra is a water tyrant. It can breathe underwater, but it can't swim. She saw that Hydra was attempting to come to the surface as Naruto completed filling the area with water. Wow, it actually worked. Tia and Jiraiya criticized her inadvertent suggestion. She did more seals with her hands. Water style. Water prison jutsu. Naruto submerged her hands in the water, willed a prison to enclose Hydra, and appeared with the water imprisoning it, preventing it from moving. Naruto performed a one-handed seal and said, it was nice know you know what I wish I didn't know you. Naruto shouted, water style. Water prison execution jutsu. As Hydra began to be crushed by the water in the water prison, her view was soon obscured by white bubbles before the water prison burst. Hydra was covered in purple blood and guts as a result of her limbs and guts spreading out in all directions after being covered in the creature's guts. Naruto finally released her lunch, saying, yup, definitely wish I didn't know it. To get rid of it, she performed a water jutsu. I can clean myself all day, but I feel like I will never be clean again. Naruto sensed an aura accumulating in the water just as she was ready to cancel it. A water dragon soon emerged from the water, causing a tidal wave to form as it did so. The dragon had a tan underbelly and light blue scales. It had long wings that resembled fins in some ways, and its fins were also light blue. 2 of the dragon's horns pointed back towards its back, while 2 more, smaller than the ones on its forehead, were attached to its jaw. From where she was standing, she could see that the dragon's jaw and snout were spiked, and its teeth were extremely sharp. It had a blue jewel on its forehead and bright blue eyes. Overall, the dragon was longer than the Hydra but just as large. Naruto was so enthralled with the water dragon that she failed to notice the tsunami that was approaching her. Oh crap! To prevent herself from being smashed by a huge wave, Naruto made a water prison. She cancelled her water prison after the tsunami hit. The water dragon boss told Naruto, you've grown since the last time I saw you. As the dragon loomed over her, you can use Hydra's special technique because you defeated it. Naruto questioned, what techniques is that? Wondering what sort of technique the distorted dragon had developed. I think you'll understand it from Tiamat. The water dragon noticed Tia and Jiraiya on the hilltop. I don't think I introduced myself. My name is Leviathan, and I am the water dragon boss. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto bowed to the dragon. As Tia observed the exchange between the two, she thought to herself, at least she's showing respect to Leviathan. As he dried off from the tsunami that struck him, Jiraiya questioned, why should she show respect to that dragon specifically? Out of all the boss dragons, Leviathan is one of the strongest dragons. There is even fighting outside of the ocean. Leviathan can put up a fight. Jiraiya nodded in agreement. I learned that you can defeat a water dragon in water from that battle with Hydra. Naruto must have heard Leviathan complain that Hydra shouldn't be referred to as a dragon. Combating Hydra as a means to test your ability to turn an advantage into a disadvantage. Hydra's collapse wasn't the first time. When Naruto said, "Wait, you mean that thing is still alive?" she heard Jiraiya exclaim, "What?" Yes, indeed, Hydra must have been defeated in a variety of ways, and you weren't the first person to take these tests. He was once impaled by ice, stabbed by water, crushed by water, and drowned by water. Leviathan anticipated Naruto's question about how a water dragon drowned in water. The individual engaged in combat with Hydra simply poured water on him until he drowned. I still don't understand how it happened. In any case, I think you fought for this. Leviathan quickly shrank and began to glow brightly blue. Before long, Leviathan had reached Jiraiya's height. She indeed, Leviathan is female. She is dressed in a battle kimono that differs slightly from Naruto's. She wears a white battle kimono with a water motif. She had a blue jewel on the back of her hands and gauntlets spiked back at the wrist. The battle boots had a blue jewel on the shin and were high-heeled, and the chest plate was identical. She also added a headband to her armor, which had a large blue jewel in the middle and pieces that pointed back like horns on the sides. Her hair, which is long and silver blue, had long bangs on the side. Due to the headband, a brilliant blue light was shining between her outstretched hands as she held them out to Naruto. Naruto held the woman's hand up to the glowing orb of light until she touched it. "Take my gift and I will help you control water," the woman said. Naruto was quickly consumed by the light, and his entire mindscape turned white. "Now that you have passed the water test, I, Leviathan, acknowledges your strength." Naruto Uzumaki is a summoner of the water dragons. Actual world. Naruto's mindscape abruptly ended. She glanced around and saw Jiraiya lying on his back, drooling, on the floor. "What happened to you?" Naruto turned to Tia, who was prodding the pervert, and said, "I think that is the side effect of transferring another person's mind to another." Naruto fainted as she said, "I should have told him the first time. He just needs some time to rest. As for you, you should get some rest as well." Tia took Naruto from Jiraiya for some water manipulation training after he needed some rest, so Jiraiya could focus on his research, which included meeting with his spy network. One of the things he introduced Naruto to was that she would attend meetings in his place if he was absent or on other business. Naruto looked at Tia thoughtfully and said, "Leviathan mentioned learning Hydra's personal technique." As she performed the required hand seals, Tia gave Naruto instructions, saying, "Dragon split. It's not actually Hydra's technique, but the elders got this idea from him. Do a water dragon missile, but do a dragon seal after you unleash the attack." Naruto yelled, "Water style! Water dragon missile!" and to her amazement, the water suddenly appeared to perform a water attack. She didn't require a water source or a lot of focus. Once she recovered from her shock, she performed the dragon seal and observed the water dragon dividing into smaller creatures and attacking various locations. As Naruto merely observed the destruction she had wrought, Tia remarked, "As you can see, the dragon split. Like the name suggested, it splits the original technique into smaller forms and can attack multiple targets or a single target at different angles. Not to mention Leviathan is helping you control water." Naruto asked Tia, "Wait, Leviathan is helping me control water?" But someone else beat her to the punch before she could explain it. To her right, Naruto saw some water forming into a... "Yes, I am helping you out with controlling water." Tiny, fin-equipped snake that floats in midair. Naruto's face was expressionless. Then she sighed deeply, something she's beginning to do automatically. The snake and lizard heard Naruto whisper to herself, "I'm getting help from little reptiles." She then continued to be hosed down by water after being struck by a massive mass of water that sent her flying into a tree. Tia told the water dragon, who was still willing to hose Naruto down, "Levia, I think she had enough." Leviathan laughed at the girl and kept hosing her down, saying, "Don't worry, she'll live." Tia had to concur with her when she said, "I hadn't had this much fun in a long time. It had been a while since they had a summoner, and this one is proving to be a lot of fun." The following day Jiraiya and Naruto were traveling once more, but this time she was dressed more casually, wearing a white kimono and shinobi sandals. Her katana was wrapped in a cloth and carried on her back by her backpack. Jiraiya was writing a little too much in his notebook, and Naruto spent her time practicing water manipulation. Naruto called out to him, "Jiraiya?" Naruto questioned the author of the Icha Icha series. "You've been writing in that notebook a lot lately and you already sent out a volume to the editor, so what gives?" With dollar signs in his eyes, he exclaimed, "Writing my next best series." Naruto took the notepad out of his hands and read what was written on it. Naruto kept reading the notes and realized what Jiraiya was writing. "The water dragon is holding the princess of the water kingdom as a hostage and... you used my tests for profit." Jiraiya grabbed the notepad from Naruto just as she was ready to burn it. As she attempted to remove the notepad from Naruto, Jiraiya exclaimed, "What are you thinking? You know how much a volume costs." She yelled, "I don't care," and made the decision to ignore it. All Jiraiya needed to know what she was going to do was for her to take a deep breath, so he got ready to extinguish a flame. In order to stop her from breathing fire, Jiraiya doused her with water, some of which got into her mouth as she let out her flame breath. He only needed that to stop her from breathing anymore, and the smoke coming from her mouth indicates that she is no longer breathing fire. Tia informed the two that if the area is extremely moist or if she swallows liquids while her stomach is burning, it would be difficult for her to breathe fire. She inhaled deeply once more. Jiraiya told Naruto, "You can't breathe fire, Naruto, so just calm down." Naruto let out a breath, but it was fire instead. Jiraiya screamed, "Ice," at the unexpected assault. When the ice breath hit the ground, it covered Jiraiya's legs with ice, immobilizing him during this time. Naruto removed the notepad. Jiraiya stopped her from burning the notepad and said, "How about I give you cut off the profit?" "How much?" Naruto inquired, closely observing the Sannin. Jiraiya saw her considering it and said, 20%, and you know how much I get off my books." She said, "You're not going to use the original names or anything close, are you? What exactly is this series is about?" she asked, breaking the ice covering his legs as she returned the notepad. Naruto was stopped in her tracks when he said, "It is similar to your tests. I'm just using the dragons as a reference and the main character is a woman." Unbelieving what she was hearing, Naruto said, "Please tell me you're joking. To save a princess, a female warrior slays a dragon. The warrior should be a man, right?" "No, I received a note from my producer and requested some girl action, and the ICHA series is good enough. If I was going to write something else, it would have to be girl action," Jiraiya stated to Naruto, who was just palming. Until Jiraiya posed a question, Naruto simply sighed and carried on down the street. Jiraiya questioned her, "So when are you going to do the fire test?" Naruto told Jiraiya, "Tomorrow hopefully." Tia said, "I need some time to recover until Leviathan is settled in my mind." They both noticed water forming in front of them, and the Leviathan appeared in the shape of a tiny water snake. "What are you doing out here?" Leviathan told the two. "Tia kicked me out." They both questioned what she had done. In the mindscape of Naruto, water is everywhere and the land is completely soaked. After it returned to the ocean, the mental image of the house is in ruins. The roof's tiles were deteriorating, there were broken windows, the walls were somewhat collapsed. The fuming woman cleaning the place makes the inside much worse. Tia twisted a pillow to remove the water from it and said, "I told her not to swim in the ocean. But she had to jump into the air and splash into the ocean in her dragon form." Tia muttered as she returned to tidying up what she could. The moment she entered her mind, she started swimming around and making tsunamis. Actual world Leviathan admitted with some embarrassment, "I kind of let loose. She should be training instead of engaging in childish activities like splashing around in the ocean. But all water dragons, including the massive Leviathan, are powerless against the open sea. I get to enjoy some fresh air, at least." The water dragon nodded when Jiraiya said, "I assume you were the one who taught the girl how to do breath ice." Jiraiya turned to face Naruto as Leviathan said, "I wouldn't call it breathe ice, Jiraiya-san. It is more like spitting ice." She pointed to Jiraiya and asked Naruto, who moaned in response, "What is this I hear about a water princess?" Occasionally, if you want to leave a situation where a woman believes you have committed a perverted act, you only have to say Jiraiya's name or gesture in his direction. Sometimes it provides all the necessary explanation. Naruto's thoughts for the following day. Jiraiya and Naruto both reappeared in Naruto's thoughts. Tai appeared irritated. Leviathan avoided eye contact with Tia, who was glaring at her, and Jiraiya saw that the lodge in Naruto's mind had some water damage. When Naruto saw that Tia was staring at Leviathan and the house was in ruins, she asked her first charge, "Okay Tai, what gives?" Tia said, "Nothing," and turned to leave, but that was the only warning Jiraiya and Naruto received and the only explanation they required. With Jiraiya and Leviathan following closely behind, but keeping a considerable distance from Tia, Naruto declared, "She is pissed." They arrived at a rock bed where everyone could see that it was, in fact, a lake of lava with rocks on top. After a long walk toward the suffocating mountain and a great deal of awkward silence, Naruto didn't mind the heat, but Jiraiya found it difficult to tolerate. As Tia collected chakra in her right hand and launched it into the lava lake, Naruto said, "I see why I needed water manipulation." The land started to tremble. This fire tyrant is a bit different. There are a few different kinds of dragons. Jiraiya found the heat intolerable, and Naruto started to feel the heat. There are the wyverns. They're usually powerful dragons. Of us all, they're physically powerful and some can fly, but most of them are more devastating on land. As the earth ceased to tremble and the temperature ceased to rise, Naruto questioned, "What do you mean most don't fly?" As Tia gazed at the rock bed, Leviathan informed Naruto, "It is because the way they fly is the use of wings." Tia said, "You know about wings, right?" Naruto nodded and started to worry. Tia told Naruto, who appeared perplexed, "Their wings are attached to their backs, but wyvern wings are attached to their arms, and sometimes their wings replace their arms. Sometimes their wings are just for show, because some of them are huge as a mountain." Naruto turned to Leviathan and said, "The second time is the piscine, they're the swimmers. Think of them as sharks." As Leviathan smiled at the part about being a hybrid, Tia remarked, "She is a hybrid of piscine and ancient dragons." Naruto gulped when he heard a piscine swimming in lava and the area she was in. Anyway, the piscine can swim in water, sand, earth, even lava. It is indeed a piscine. She was reassured by the words, "Don't worry girl, you are fighting an elder dragon." Naruto asked, "Wait, an elder dragon?" And the dragon appeared, giving her the answer. As the dragon emerged from the lava lake, it spread its black, crimson wings and flapped to make a smooth landing. After landing on its hind feet, it used its claws to brace itself. Lava splashes into the lake as the dragon's tail whips into it with a fierce roar that shook the ground and injured Jiraiya's and Naruto's ears. It lifted its long neck. Naruto surveyed its appearance after it ceased roaring and saw that the dragon's wings were only affixed to its back. It is the same size as Hydra and has crimson, smoldering skin with a few black spots. Its skull has some spikes pointing backward. Tia introduced the two, saying, "Naruto meet Fatalis, Fatalis meet Naruto." The dragon said to Naruto, who was taken aback that the dragon could speak, "So, this is the type that defeated Hydra." "It talks?" Naruto asked, pointing to the dragon as he turned to face Tia. It roared, "Of course I talk, you brat," at Naruto, who was somewhat alarmed by the noise and the fact that it could speak at the same time. Naruto responded to Fatalis's statement by saying, "But Hydra wasn't talking when we fought." As a dragon, it seemed as though Fatalis was speaking directly to them when he said, "Hydra lost his mind a long time ago and attacks anything he sees. He is also imprisoned for life and is the only one who became a tester, even if he is insane." Jiraiya asks, "A tester?" as she perspires in the intense heat. Fatalis gazed at Tia, who felt small in his presence. "You didn't tell them," Fatalis said. Tia shrank as Fatalis glared at her and she said, "I told them that the tyrant dragons are dragons that are against the rules." As Tia turned her head away and tried to recall the day the title was changed, Fatalis said to her, "The definition of tyrant dragons is dragons that test our summoners. You were there when we changed the title." In those days, as the other dragons started discussing the topic, Leviathan said, "All right, let's move on to the next subject of the title, Tyrant Dragon." During the meeting, Fatalis stated, "We can all agree to that. We can test our summoners ourselves, then let them decide who is worthy to summon us." Several dragons nodded in agreement. He was well received when he suggested, "How about we just put the title up for dragons that test our summoners?" "What says you, Tiamat?" Leviathan asked, looking up at Tia and perspiring at what she saw. Leviathan simply shrugged off the Imperial Dragon's indolence as Tiamat, in her human form, read a book while utterly ignoring the meeting. She'll pretend. Tia licked her finger and went to the next page of her book, saying, "Sure, whatever." I was aware the mindscape of Naruto. Tai sheepishly scratched her back and attempted to disappear, but Leviathan blocked her way. "I don't remember about that meeting. It's unbelievable that an Imperial Dragon would be so careless as to deceive our summoners." Naruto questioned Hydra's status as a water tyrant dragon, asking, "So tyrant dragons are testers then, what about Hydra?" As Fatalis grew weary and started to lie down, he responded, "Hydra is just a brute who lost his mind and is a perfect dragon to test our summoners to use water techniques against a water dragon. He thought this might take some time." Levia chimed in, "He's got a point. You don't see warriors fighting fire with fire, or in this case, water with water." Naruto positioned himself in front of Fatalis and said, "Okay, let's just get this over with. What am I supposed to do in this test anyways?" With an earth-shattering roar, Fatalis rose to his feet and prepared to leap on the small human. "Nothing much, just survive for an hour." Fatalis simply shook his head in response to Naruto's question, "Just survive? Yeah, that's I don't know hidden answer." "Okay, on my Goa," Leviathan yelled. Naruto collected her chakra and pulled out her katana as Fatalis stood poised. "Go." In order to avoid Fatalis' lung bite, Naruto immediately leapt to the right. The tail nearly struck her, but she rolled on the ground and jumped over a claw. Fatalis spun around and prepared to attack. Naruto recently discovered that Fatalis' ferocity was the reason the fire test was challenging, not the intense fire attacks. It was quick and consisted of a single, continuous lung, claw, and tail strike. After 5 seconds, I'm already thinking about failing this test. After giving it some thought, Naruto performed some hand seals. But Fatalis struck before she could complete them. The same 3 attacks had to be avoided by Naruto. Fatalis performed the hand seals required to gain an advantage in combat shortly after Naruto reached behind her back. Water style. Exploding water shockwave. Naruto began spouting water all over the battlefield, cooling it down and converting the magma into rocks. After that was done, the land was soaked with water, which she considered a plus. As he viciously attacked Naruto and sprayed the water all over him, blinding him slightly, Fatalis remarked, "Like this is going to help you out?" Okay, so perhaps it did help her a little. Where he was watching the fight, Jiraiya yelled, "45 seconds passed, girl." Naruto exclaimed in shock, 45 seconds? She believed her battle had lasted longer. When Fatalis noticed a gap, he used his claws to strike Naruto and cut through her, but all he managed to do was create a water clone. The water, Naruto performed more hand seals, but Fatalis roared and began to spread earth-melting flames throughout the field. Water style. Rainfall jutsu. Fatalis has made no progress in eliminating the water. Understanding the significance of this test, Jiraiya remarked, "I see why she needs to finish the water test first. It was a survival test against a formidable foe rather than a test of strength." She watched as Fatalis clawed his way through one water clone after another, but Leviathan remarked, "Actually she could survive this test with earth, but the place was filled with magma." Half an hour into the battle, Fatalis is a fierce fighter. He recognized Naruto's attack style and began luring him out into the open. Desperate, Naruto inhaled deeply before launching a stream of ice at Fatalis' arms and legs, which could only immobilize him for a brief moment. In desperation, Fatalis whipped his tail at Naruto, who was unable to avoid it. She blocked as best she could with her katana, but the force of the tail sent her flying across the field. If it had been someone else, they would have suffered numerous broken bones. The test ended when Fatalis, seeing an opportunity he couldn't let pass, broke through the ice that had frozen him to the ground, lunged at Naruto, and took her entire body in his mouth. Tia said, unconcerned about Naruto, "I guess she failed this exam." Jiraiya was completely taken aback. She left the fight, but she saw Fatalis flailing in the field, and thought, maybe she needs more training for this. What now? When everyone in the field turned to look, they saw Naruto sitting on Fatalis' tongue with her sword wedged into his upper jaw and his mouth forced open. Leviathan exclaimed, "Hey, she's holding on," with delight. With Naruto in his mouth, Fatalis muttered, "Dumut ked, get owtufmi moth." He felt the katana almost pierce his brain. Volvagia will not let this go if he dies here. "You try anything, then I will jam this katana up your brain." Naruto had a close-up look at what goes on inside Fatalis' mouth. Fatalis utterly bluffed. "Why like to see you'll try, instead." "Yeah," bluffed Naruto. "She uses all of her strength to hang on." "Yeah." Jiraiya pointed to the two who were bluffing their way out of defeat and asked, "Should we stop them?" Tia and Leviathan exchanged a brief glance. As they observed the two arguing, Tia remarked, "Nah, I want to see how long this lasts." 5 hours later they calmed down and simply waited for the two to attack. With a female human beginning to taste good at this very moment, Fatalis had to sit down with his mouth open uncomfortably. Even though Naruto is exhausted and on the verge of falling asleep, the rumbling noise and the tongue she is sitting on are keeping her awake. The awkward silence that followed Naruto's question, "Hey Fatalis, how long has it been now? I passed, didn't I?" Fatalis simply complained, shook Naruto's tongue, shut his mouth, and spat her out. She reached into his mouth, took out the sword that was on the verge of killing him, put it down, and then put his jaw back in place. He looked down to see Naruto wiping slime off herself and glaring at him. "Yes, it looks like you passed. There has never been a summoner who passed by sitting in my mouth." He simply sprayed her with water to make her glare more intense. He merely laughed just before he exploded in flames. Fatalis remarked, "Well, I had my fun and I should be going. Say hi for me when you see Volvagia." Naruto persisted in using the water on the ground to wipe her own saliva off. As she cleaned herself as best she could, Naruto complained, "Damn it, this is the second time this happened." Despite this, she still felt the need to clean her mind. Then the mental volcano erupted before it emerged. A massive black cloud covered the mountain and rained fire. The boss fire dragon. The dragon flew in Naruto's direction after exploding violently from the volcano. It caused dancing flames to fall to the ground wherever it flew, burning the area. It has 3 long fire-shaped manes, black skin with red flames burning, and an orange underbelly. Its head is covered by a mask that looks like metal. Its long spine curled up to allow its legs to hit the ground as it landed on its hands, but the ground burned, causing tiny eruptions as it did so. All things considered, it is as magnificent as Leviathan, but with fire. Reaching up to its head, it looked down at Naruto and took off the metal mask. It exploded into flames as soon as it took off the mask. A woman, who she assumed was preteen, stood in its place when the flames subsided. She is wearing a black kimono with orange and red flames, and she has a metal mask in her hand. Her right arm is bandaged, and she has a red long scarf around her neck. Her hair is flaming and spiky, and her eyes are red. If Naruto had to guess, she appears to be a hothead. Yes, a hothead. Wow, that was the best fight I have seen in years. Yes, she began shaking Naruto's hands rapidly and said, "The name is Volvagia the Fire Dragon, and you can call me Volva." She was unsure of what to do in this circumstance. Unsure of what to do, Naruto simply stood there and observed her, saying, "Auma Nicia to meet you." Okay. Like tradition here, Volva extended her hands in Leviathan's manner, and a dazzling red light emerged between them. "I'm not much on speeches, so just accept it and we can talk later." Leviathan screamed, "Damn it Volvagia, the speech is custom." Tia stopped Leviathan from beating up Volvagia by saying, "Let her go Levia, she is the free spirit type." Reaching for the red light, Naruto sort of fell into it and vanished from her mindscape. Volva recalled her brief altercation with Fatalis as she glanced over the area where Naruto had been. He sure knows how to tire out our summoners. Actual world. After his brief trip in Naruto's mind, Jiraiya awoke to see a strange battle that began as a risky duel over who could outbluff whom. Naruto was totally distraught from her mental ordeal when he turned to look at her. Jiraiya picked her up and took her to the room they had rented for the night after saying, "These fights of yours are going to be the end of you." Returning to the mindscape of Naruto as they entered the new house in Naruto's imagination, Volva asked the two, "Care to brief me in on what you taught her? It didn't appear to have any water damage." Recalling how long it took to correct her taijutsu stance, Tia remarked, "Well, I taught her how to breathe fire, gave her some tips on her dragon stance, helped her with element control, and taught her some kenjutsu stances. Her skin is still like a hatchling, her eyes aren't developed yet, and her strength is deadly." Jiraiya taught her some things like working on her chakra control and manipulation. He taught her some of the other element jutsu. Her genjutsu just plain doesn't exist. Volva nodded to the other two as she said, "Huh? Like she needs genjutsu anyways. Once her eyes develop, she doesn't have to worry about genjutsu." "Well, I taught her how to breath ice and taught her some water jutsu like the rainfall. I was planning on teaching her the other taijutsu stance and on more advanced sword stances." Leviathan reflected on the situation. Volva looked thoughtfully and said, "Maybe I can throw in a few of the high-level water jutsu. So what are you going to teach her?" "I don't know. I didn't have a summoner in a very long time. I could teach her the dragon breath stream, the dragon claw, some fire jutsu that I know of, and teach her how to summon fire with her hands. We will have to wait with her sub-element training until she works with her 5 elements first." Volva replied and turned to Tia. "Yes, her body will have to adapt first to be able to use the sub-elements. In a few weeks she will be able to learn the boil, but for now, we will wait until she passes the next test." The present and the wind's temptation. As she ate her breakfast, Naruto paused between bites to ask, "So what are we going to do?" Jiraiya chewed his food with a contemplative expression. Recalling the lessons he had taught her since she was 4 years old, Jiraiya remarked, "Right now I don't know. All I can think about is doing some speed training and some chakra control exercises. I could teach you sealing." Sadistically, wanting to know more, Naruto said, "Really, that's all you can teach me?" Jiraiya returned to her meal and said, "You practically take things like a sponge girl. You can let those dragons of yours to teach you more." Jiraiya brought Naruto to the waterfall country after the two had completed their meal and paid for it. Jiraiya took Naruto to a bank by a river that has a waterfall when they arrived. With Naruto, who also knows the water walk technique, following him, Jiraiya said, "Alright, from what I figured from your battle tests, it seems like it follows the element chart." Jiraiya was walking on the river and heading towards the waterfall. "Naruto, what do you know of the element chart?" Recalling the lectures on the elements from both Jiraiya and Tia, Naruto remarked, "The element chart is 5 elements. Well, there are 5 elements: water, earth, wind, fire, and lightning. The chart goes from water is strong against fire, fire to wind, wind to lightning, lightning to earth, and then earth to water. Is that what you were asking for?" However, the sub-elements, such as magma and metal, were much more complex, requiring both fire and earth, making the explanation much more difficult. As he studied the waterfall, Jiraiya said, "And tell me about your tests." Naruto said, "Well, I started with the water tests, then I moved on to fire." Then she had an idea. "Hey, my tests are like the element chart, and then wind is my next test." Jiraiya grinned at his pupil's brilliance. "Tia could teach you some wind manipulation. The only wind training I know of is cutting a waterfall with wind chakra." Naruto looked inside her kimono and saw her red bodysuit, which was only hemmed down to her thighs, and said, "Yeah, she said something about learning more advanced taijutsu styles and improving my kenjutsu, but I trained with her in my mindscape, so out here I just trained my body. Is this bodysuit necessary?" He received a glare and laughed nervously. The bodysuit is like weights, and the armbands and shin bands are also used for speed training. "Are you used to the extra weight?" he asked. "Do 10 shadow clones Naruto?" Jiraiya was admired by all 6 of Naruto's shadow clones. "Okay. 4 of them will do run up the waterfall with chakra, and 1 will try to split the waterfall with wind chakra, 2 will practice taijutsu, and 2 will practice kenjutsu, and the last one will come with me to review on seals." Jiraiya stated that he was bringing a shadow. Naruto questioned the lone survivor on the middle of the river. "Hey, what about me? You do some laps across the river and up the walls. That'll help you with chakra control and increase your reserves. Though you don't really need to increase your reserves, you know that shadow clones can improve your stamina, endurance and strength." Jiraiya stated as she began to run. "Okay. Naruto, what do you know about sealing?" Training in mindscapes. Following her training with Jiraiya, Naruto emerged in her mindscape, and it is indeed quite challenging in her imagination. She moved in the direction of the house and discovered that it was somewhat larger. She noticed Tia inside, arranging some scrolls on the shelves. Tia returned to the central table in the room after saying, "Oh, you arrived earlier than usual. Was Jiraiya's training that tiring?" As she was making some tea, Tia remarked, "Well, don't expect Volva and Leviathan's training to be easy either. From what I remember, it is very difficult." Naruto turned to see Volva behind her and said, "Damn right, it will be hard," before moving to the table to take a seat after entering the room. Leviathan sat down close to the table and accepted Tia's tea. Naruto eyed the tea on the table, wondering if it would satisfy her thirst, and asked, "So what are you going to teach me?" With a ball of fire in her hand, Volva exclaimed, "My training is to help you learn how to control fire," and smothered the flames with her fist. "Also, I will be teaching you the Dragon's Claw, which is an advanced form of the Dragon Stance, and your mother happens to know this style." Naruto exclaimed, "I'll be learning mother's fighting style," as she learned her mother's taijutsu technique. Volva turned to face Leviathan and said, "Yup, I will also be teaching you how to intensify your fire attacks. Your turn." Leviathan simply sipped her tea and then gave her a contemplative glance. "We could start with another fighting style called the Flowing Dragon, which is more fluid. I will also be teaching you kenjutsu style that will take you a very long time to learn and is also very fluid." Leviathan went on to describe her training when Leviathan said, "I think Tai doesn't have anything much to teach you right now." Tia was studying a scroll. Tia nodded in response to Naruto's question, "You have nothing else to teach me?" "Yeah, I got nothing to teach you right now. Jiraiya is already teaching you how to learn wind manipulation, and he is right about your next test, so you have to learn what you can from Jiraiya. Volva and Leviathan, I still have to organize this place up a bit." Tia gestured to the stack of scrolls on the ground. Naruto seized a scroll that contained information about seals' history and their potential uses. "Why are you organizing the things I learned?" Tia picked up a scroll from the floor and opened it, saying, "Well, I discovered that your mind is still a little disorganized, so I am left with fixing up your memory files likey. Let's see, this scroll has everything you know about Shizune. This is a memory scroll, so I will have to file it as memory." Naruto was about to take a scroll when Volva grabbed her and pulled her from the house, saying, "Come on, we have to start your training." With a simple sigh, Leviathan left the house and followed the two into the field. Naruto and Volva reached an open field with some rocks buried in it. Naruto got to his feet and looked around. Naruto turned to Volva, who was examining some boulders, and said, "Okay, let's review what you know about dragon breaths. Okay, do a stream of fire at that boulder over there and keep it flowing until you melt it." After taking a deep breath and glancing at the boulder, Naruto threw a stream of fire at it before moving on. The boulder melted completely after 3 minutes of her flame attack, so she used her dragon breath to stop. Leviathan was observing Naruto's training while perched on a rock overlooking the field below. Volva said, "Niece, you melted the rock fast. Now can you create a huge ball of fire?" Naruto inhaled deeply and directed her enormous ball of flames at another rock, causing it to explode and destroy it entirely. Naruto was considering her options and questioned how she could accomplish it. "Now can you do the same thing but with multiple shots?" Then she simply followed instructions, making several miniature versions of that enormous ball. Naruto appeared perplexed and unsure of what to do but said, "Good, now can make a flame smear across the field." Naruto simply shook her head, asking, "You don't know what to do, do you?" "Thought so. Tell me what you know about the dragon breath." Considering what she knew about dragon breath, Naruto remarked, "Well, The dragon breath is the chemicals in the stomach that make it very flammable and ignites when I take a deep breath. Recalling that Leviathan had taught her how to spit out ice, Volva remarked, "Well, that is just the tip of the iceberg. Girl. Well, you have been using the dragon breath for some time now and you noticed the difference between ice and fire breaths, right?" Naruto nodded as she recalled the sensation of the flames in her stomach being ignited by the oxygen she inhales and exhales. However, the dragon ice breath is a little different. Instead of igniting the contents in her stomach, she uses her saliva and combines it with the substances she uses to use fire, which causes her to spit out ice. Naruto asked Volva, who was about to respond, "So the stuff in my stomach is used for dragon breath?" Leviathan responded instead. From her perch atop the hill, Leviathan exclaimed, "Yes, the stuff in your stomach is used to breath out flames and spit out ice. There are many uses for the dragon breath." Volva gave her a nod, not caring that she had been interrupted. "There are many uses for the dragon breath. If you trained more into the dragon breath, you will be able to create a blast of wind, able to intensify your flames, spew out water, and if you want you can create a stream of lightning." Volva stated that Naruto can use the dragon breath. Naruto nodded, curious to find out more about the dragon breath. "Really cool, huh?" Naruto nodded as he recalled that jutsu to produce some water. "From what Leviathan told me, you required a jutsu to spew out water, right?" Leviathan used this opportunity to explain what she would be teaching Naruto. "Well, that jutsu is a waste of your time, so you will be learning how to control your dragon breath." Leviathan informed Naruto of what she would teach her, saying, "What she means is she is going to teach you the uses for the dragon breath. I am going to teach you the fighting style, the flowing dragon, and the kenjutsu style called the current." After 3 months, she is able to repeatedly cut the waterfall in half in 3 months. It took her 2 months to run up the river, and she continued to use shadow clones to hone her reserves and control. Running with weights on top of the water also helped Naruto's endurance and stamina. Her total weight is 160 pounds, which includes 60 pounds for her bodysuit, 20 pounds for her wrists, and 30 pounds for her shins. Jiraiya was astounded that she could walk normally despite carrying nearly twice as much weight. She learned the fundamentals of sealing from Jiraiya, and she can now create her own explosive and storage seals. The bullet seal is a seal that Naruto made for her kunai that, when she threw them, would fly as fast as sound and vanish after use. She had to find something that would work with the seal because she discovered that kunais don't work well with it. She has also had excellent results from her training with Leviathan and Volva. Volva was able to teach Naruto additional techniques for extinguishing fire, such as distributing fire throughout the field, focusing a beam of fire that can instantly melt a rock, forming a ring of fire, producing a tornado, and enhancing her flames. After finishing that, she was able to learn her mother's taijutsu style, known as Dragon Claws, to create the Dragon Claws. She had to combine the dragon stance with the basic technique of applying fire chakra to her nails to create fire claws. Although it wasn't what she was looking for, she also showed Naruto how to hold fire in her hands and toss it at a target that had a small fireball destroyed. Naruto learned the flowing dragon's subtle style from Leviathan. The style calls for fluid movements that attack like a waterfall, striking a rock, and flow around attacks like water to a rock. The current's kenjutsu is exactly what its name implies. She can strike swiftly like the rapids or flow like a serene river. She also taught Naruto the water ball, water pressure stream, and gallons of water spewing dragon breath. She needs to pass Jiraiya first, but she is currently prepared to battle the wind tyrant. Jiraiya called out to Naruto, who took off her kimono and stood in her bodysuit. "Hey, Naruto, are you ready yet?" "Just a second, sensei." Naruto sealed his hand, and the atmosphere around him changed. Jiraiya was aware that she would treat this seriously. She worked her body weight by extending her arms and legs. "Whenever you're ready." After standing facing each other for a short while, Naruto inhaled deeply before launching a lung of fire that engulfed Jiraiya and spread across the ground. Knowing that something like that wouldn't defeat Jiraiya, Naruto held her ground and kept her guard up. When she heard rumbling beneath her, she leapt away from Jiraiya's hand, which was trying to bury her in the ground. She blew a ball of flame at the hand. Just like her first move, only burned Eartha and Earth Clone remained after the flames extinguished. Jiraiya kept up his attacks, pushing Naruto back as he took a step back, narrowly avoiding a punch to the face. As Jiraiya was beginning to struggle with his attack, he saw that Naruto was deftly sidestepping his blows, so she struck with an open palm. He used his arm to block the palm, but it caused some stiffness in his arm, which sent him reeling back. "That really hurt. Ouch, that style is just as risky as Kushina's." Jiraiya pondered while dodging Naruto's fluid attacks. Jiraiya jumped back and performed a series of hand seals. Earth style. Swamp of the underworld. Jiraiya pressed his palms together, forming a massive swamp-like landscape. Jiraiya took a deep breath and spit out a tongue of ice at the swamp, freezing where she was going to land and land on the ground safely because Naruto was in the air when she called forth the swamp. Jiraiya used a water dragon to retaliate against Naruto's taunt. You're going to have to do better than that. By using the swamp as a water source, Naruto countered the jutsu by cancelling each out with her own dragon, saying, "Huh? This is getting old." Knowing that he would use fire, Jiraiya countered with her own flames while performing a tiger seal, saying, "That wasn't my intention, girl." A torrent of flames that both were attempting to overwhelm one another was extinguished. He only hit a shadow clone, but Jiraiya deceived him by appearing behind Naruto and kicking her into the swamp. As Jiraiya turned to face the voice, she saw a water-based Leviathan just before it smashed into the swamp, causing a massive tsunami that landed on her. Water style. Leviathan tsunami. I heard the voice. Jiraiya was carried away by the wave, which eventually came to a stop. Jiraiya was coughing up some water across the field when he was struck by a massive ball of fire. She was greeted by a clone of scorched mud when Naruto went to view her useful work. Damn, I almost had him. The mud clone Jiraiya left behind was coughing up some water behind a rock a short distance away. She really took me by surprise with that wave there. I would have been done if I hadn't made that mud clone. Naruto was standing where he had left his mud clone, trying to sense him out. When Jiraiya peered over the rock, she doesn't use much chakra when she uses her incredible ability to unleash fire and water attacks without seals, but she must have been exhausted by that last attack. Whoa. Jiraiya's thoughts were disrupted when the rock he was hiding behind began to melt and he began to feel extremely hot. He replaced the rock with another one that melted quickly after the original rock melted completely. She is becoming more adept at identifying her enemies. I'd better stop this before Jiraiya's thoughts were cut off once more. Water style. Water prison jutsu. Jiraiya spun around, only to be swallowed up by a water ball. Naruto joyfully exclaimed, "Huh? Got you, sensei, I win," after capturing Jiraiya in the water prison. Just before Naruto felt weightless, Jiraiya said incoherently, "Sorry Naruto, but you lose." She exclaimed, "Huh?" before plummeting into a pit and landing on her back. When Naruto looked over the pit, he saw two Jiraiyas peering down. "How? I caught you," he exclaimed before the Jiraiya she captured turned to smoke. She uttered the words, "Shadow clone." Jiraiya called out, "Get up here, girl. We have to get to the next town before they close down a restaurant." Naruto simply shunshin from the pit. She knew that Jiraiya could set that pit on fire or create some spikes at the bottom, so she didn't bother to say that the fight was not over. It was simply a test of her abilities. She started running up to Jiraiya after gathering her belongings and putting on her kimono. As they made their way to the next town, Naruto questioned, "So at what level am I?" Naruto simply moaned upon learning that she was unable to force Jiraiya to engage in serious combat. "From what I witness, you were able to catch me off guard once and you were able to hold your own with me when I am not fighting you seriously." Knowing that she can compete with a Jonin, head-to-head lifted her spirits. "Don't be down, kid. You will be able to take on some Jonin on a one-on-one and maybe two if you're lucky. Let's go, we need to resupply." After giving a nod, Naruto ran to the next town. When they got to the next town, Jiraiya gave Naruto a list and the food they would need for another journey and said he had to go meet his contact. They parted ways after he instructed her to meet him outside the bar they had initially seen on their way into the town. Naruto entered a store and purchased everything they would need to set up camp outside in the event that they couldn't get to a town before nightfall. She went to a shinobi store to browse after purchasing the materials and enclosing them in a scroll. She went into the side with the weapons. When she went to the area where the kunai were on display, she saw that they had every type of kunai a shinobi could possibly need. However, none of them were the type she required. And then she found what she was seeking. The throwing knife was 1 inch in width, 5 inches in length, and had a very thin triangle blade with a hole at the end and sharp edges on both sides. She needed to test out the throwing knife because she knew bullet seal. When Naruto heard someone talking directly into her ear, she screamed, "Window shopping," and then leapt back into a wall before collapsing to the ground. That always works. Naruto saw her other sensei. When she looked up, Naruto screamed, "Shizune, what the hell?" and scowled at the woman who had frightened her. Shizune walked over to Naruto to help her up and then straightened her tattered kimono, saying, "It's always fun to scare you out of your kimono. So what you looking for?" Naruto held out the throwing knives and remarked, "I was just looking for a kunai that would go with my new seal, but it turns out there wasn't one, so I was going to buy this. I need a weapon that can move quickly without wavering, and the kunai is just too large for my bullet seal." After placing Tsunade's pig tauntaun on the ground, Shizune looked at the knife to see what she was searching for. Shizune handed the weapon back and picked up tauntaun, saying, "Well, it is well balanced, weighs lightly, and is very sharp if you are not careful. Yeah, it would be the kind of weapon you need for fast movements." Naruto gave a nod and proceeded to buy the weapons of her choice. Naruto asked, "So, where is Tsunade?" In the hopes that she would be too busy to notice. She doesn't need a woman to keep trying to kill her. Naruto nodded her head and thanked Kami for letting her know that Tsunade was drinking at a bar close to the town's entrance. Shizune said, "She is at the bar over at the entrance of the town." Naruto hoped Kami wasn't playing a trick on her by asking, "Aha Shizune, that bar wouldn't happen to be the lobster bar and grill now, would it?" Naruto sheepishly scratched her back and said, "Yeah, that's the one. How do you know?" Sure enough, she saw Jiraiya running toward her with Tsunade at his heels. When Naruto saw Tsunade, she immediately hid behind Shizune. Jiraiya shouted to Naruto, "Run for your life. Tsunade is drunk and she is pissed." Without revealing her identity, Tsunade was right behind him as he sped past Naruto and Shizune, oblivious to Shizune and failing to notice Naruto. Naruto sighed in relief when Shizune said, "It's clear, Naruto, so how did your training go?" At night, after Tsunade chased after Jiraiya, Naruto and Shizune were eating and chatting at the bar where they were meant to meet. It was unclear what Jiraiya had done to agitate Tsunade. Shizune listened to Naruto's most recent battle with Jiraiya and was shocked that she could pull it off. "So you almost had him." Naruto explained to Shizune how he deceived her by using a shadow clone, saying, "Yeah, but he ended the fight with a shadow clone and caught me in a pitfall." The entire Placia were interrupted when a white-haired man who had been severely beaten, nearly to death, entered the room being dragged by a blonde woman with a huge chest. A swarm of white hair caught her attention as she scanned the room. "You!" Tsunade yelled at Naruto, who leaped and attempted to escape, but Tsunade caught her and held onto her kimono tightly with a dark shadow over her eyes that foretold death if you didn't tell her. Tsunade asked sweetly, "Where do you think you're going? I have been looking for you for a while now, and each time you see me you run. Now tell me why you keep running away." Naruto was stuttering for something, but she didn't respond. She then slithered out of her kimono, grabbed her pack, ran for Jiraiya, shunshin away from the restaurant, and fled for the hills in a manner that made Tsunade think of Orochimaru. She completed that task in less than 2.5 seconds, and she was able to tip Shizune and pay for their meal. Shizune simply grinned at Naruto's quickness and found it funny that she consistently managed to avoid Tsunade's anger. She paid no attention to Tsunade's tirade about her disrespectful goddaughter and ungrateful pervert. "I hope her birthday gift is enjoyable before she had to stop her sensei from destroying the bar," Shizune pondered. Returning with Naruto sitting by a fire, Naruto was reading a scroll that Shizune had given her for her 12th birthday along with some chakra control exercises. It was the chakra scalpel technique. Such a technique already had applications, and she intended to combine it with her flowing dragon stance to increase its danger. She kept reading until the battered Jiraiya let out a weary moan. When Naruto's current sensei sat up and started to look around, she laughed and said, "Back from the land of the dead, are you?" Jiraiya looked at the bandage work on his face and remarked, "I'm not dead." For a second there I saw death in the face. "How bad was it?" he asked, gesturing to the bandages Tsunade had given him. "Well, she nearly beat you to mush. You had a few broken ribs and a few broken bones that weren't too difficult to fix and realign. You had major bruising on the internal organs, and then you had internal bleeding that is repaired right now. You will be alright in a few days," Naruto said to Jiraiya as she gave him some. Jiraiya took the water and drank it all. Jiraiya returned to lying down to rest, saying, "She always goes all out and this isn't the worst she has done to me." Naruto simply gave a shrug with a laugh. Jiraiya said, "At least she gives me someone to practice my medical jutsu. Are you going to watch the next test?" Naruto sat up from his position and nodded, saying, "The wind test?" Jiraiya declared to the world, "Why not? My body may be broken but my spirit is fully functional, unless Tsunade found a way to beat my spirit." Naruto simply chuckled at that statement. Naruto bit her thumb and called forth Tia in her hatchling form after the laughter ceased. When Tia saw Jiraiya's state, she yelled, "You ready? It has been 3 months and I think what in Kami's name happened to you?" Tia simply performed the customary seals and called them both to Naruto's mindscape, saying, "In fact, don't answer that. From what I remembered from last time you looked beat up, you must have crossed paths with Tsunade." The mindscape Naruto turned to see the 3 dragons moving in the direction of the mountain that had once been the volcano. It doesn't look like a frozen peak. Jiraiya questioned, "What happened to the mountain?" as she wondered why the volcano had frozen into a tundra. As she walked to the frozen peaks, Tia remarked, "Oh, that's what happens when nature takes its course." Naruto realized that the winds up these mountains are extremely unstable when a storm brewed in halfway up the mountain. Tia said as she performed her usual dragon calling action, "This is far enough." In her right hand, she collected chakra, compressed it, and launched it into the sky. As she continued to ascend the mountain, Naruto questioned, "So what kind of dragon am I fighting now?" The wind tyrant swiftly emerged from the clouds and came into view as Tia remarked, "This dragon is just as famous as a fatalis. She has many names like the Wind Dragon, Metal-Plated Dragon, Visitor of Steel, Embodiment of the Storm, and the Frozen Dictator. She is an elder dragon, much like Fatalis the Wind Tyrant, but she is smaller and has wings on its back that extend to the point where her tail starts. The dragon's skin appears silver or gray, and its tail appears normal." Tia introduced her to her next tester. Naruto meet Kushala Diora. The dragon let out a screeching roar, causing a blast of wind to surround its body and maintain it before she and the other two fled and Jiraiya was dragged away. Tia said, "Good luck." Naruto exclaimed, "Huh?" just before Kushala sent her hurtling down the mountain with a wind blast. After their brief ditch and run, Leviathan simply dropped Jiraiya to the ground, and Jiraiya said, "Hey, wait a minute, you're not going to give her some advice?" As Jiraiya looked down the mountain and saw Naruto clinging to a ledge for dear life, Leviathan said, "She needs to figure out this test herself." As Volva told Jiraiya about Kushala Diora, they watched the dragon fly through the air and descend toward Naruto. Besides, Diora takes these tests pretty seriously and we would have been on her crosshairs if we were nearby, not to mention she isn't one to talk. Naruto heard something above her as she regained her bearings on the mountain, and she saw Kushala dive directly at her. Directing a gust of wind towards Naruto, she clung desperately to the mountain, climbing up to gain a stronger position in the battle as the wind subsided. She stood her ground and searched for the dragon that blew her away as soon as she arrived at a level fighting ground. Naruto yelled, "Damn snow!" as the snow blinded her, making her angry. The wind was making it difficult for her to hear the dragon, and she was unable to see a meter in front of her. She searched but was unable to locate the dragon just before she inhaled deeply and blew a strong stream of fire that swept across the landscape and down the mountain, melting the snow. Naruto yelled, "Oh, to hell with it." She continued doing so until the blizzard gave way to rain and her vision improved. Naruto heard Kushala Diora standing behind her and said, "Smart." Kushala then performed another wind blast on Naruto, but this time she managed to hold onto the ground with chakra on her feet. Even though Kushala continued to blow wind at Naruto, she persisted. Taking a deep breath, Naruto launched several fireballs at Kushala, but the dragon sidestepped them and used a wind blast in response. Naruto then used her own fire blast. The wind blast and fire blast fought for supremacy when they met. Naruto continued to burn, but she saw that Kushala was accelerating the wind blast and eventually overtaking Naruto's flames. Naruto replaces herself with a rock that is on the ground because Kushala's wind blast carried her flames, making the attack more dangerous for Naruto. She pulled out her sword and headed for Kushala. After escaping her near defeat, the dragon turned to see Naruto approaching her with a sword poised to sever her. When Naruto received a clean cut from Kushala, she grinned, but then her smile vanished. Naruto exclaimed, "What Thea?" as she saw her sword glide away from Kushala's skin without even scratching or denting it. Then she could see Kushala laughing clearly after hearing her laugh. Before striking Naruto with her claws and lungs, Kushala chuckled and said, "My skin is made out of metal, not even your sword can cut my skin." Naruto kept dodging the blows and dodging Kushala's wind blast. "Why force me to battle a dragon that I can't defeat?" Just before she leapt behind the dragon and on top of Kushala's head, Naruto paused to think, what can beat metal? Metal, 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 metal. Naruto made an effort to identify this dragon's vulnerability. Then she had a thought that could work. After jumping into the air and blowing a turret of flames at Kushala while maintaining her flames, Naruto let loose a water dragon at the dragon. She saw Kushala's metal skin rust. After that was finished, she repeatedly used water and fire attacks until Kushala's entire metal body rusted. Kushala was now moving slowly and found it difficult to move. As Naruto stood in front of Kushala and heard the dragon laugh at her once more, she remarked, "Looks like I win." Naruto saw a huge stump on Kushala's back as he said, "It would look like you have won this fight, but I might have to thank you." Just before a crack formed, spread, and opened up, the stump was protruding. There is a gleaming tan skin inside, and something slowly emerged from the corroded skin. The fact that Kushala Diora had shed her rusted skin and emerged in a new one astounded Naruto. Once more, Kushala burst out laughing when Naruto said, "Without that metal I will be able to cut through your skin." Just before her skin changed from tan to silver metal, Kushala said, "Like I said to you before, I thank you." Kushala struck Naruto with a claw after her metal skin had healed, and she saw as she transformed into water. "Come on." She sheds her skin and then re-emerges after I turned her coat into rust. As she attempted to dodge Kushala's blows, Naruto pondered. Metal is undoubtedly difficult to pierce and impossible to dent. Going around it is the only way to get through it. and Kushala has all the angles covered while attempting to figure out how to avoid Kushala's metal skin. Naruto pondered according to what she recalls from Tia's lectures. Metal cannot break when it is superheated and then cooled. Alright, she could give that a try. Kushala was hit by Naruto's torrent of flames, but the rain prevented Kushala's metal skin from becoming overheated. As she watched Naruto unleash attack after attack of flame, Tia remarked, "Looks like she figured out how to pass this test." However, it was insufficient. Volva saw Naruto's flame attacks turn white and thought, "Her flames are getting more intense." They all let out a stream of white flames after witnessing her perform the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Kushala was able to tolerate the heat and was glowing orange after the flames subsided. Naruto yelled to the clones, "Alright, cool her down." And they used a water dragon missile to cool Kushala. Naruto cancelled her clone after the steam dispersed and saw that Kushala was immobile as she approached Kushala. She met her gaze directly. The dragon exploded into winds, sending Naruto flying across the field and rolling across the mud that had formed during the battle. "Try breaking out of that." Naruto knocked on her skin to hear the sound of hard metal. She couldn't help but stare when she saw Kushala's eyes turn silver. Naruto wiped the mud from her eyes and cried out, "Oh come on. This is the third time this happened." Behind her, Naruto heard a silver dragon that was at least 3 heads taller than Jiraiya. Indeed, it is a wyvern-type dragon with glowing patterns on its violet wings. One of the dragon's long horns pointed straight ahead, while the other pointed slightly upward. The dragon appears to have green skin with bright yellow patterns that resemble lights. Its wings, horn, tail, and back are all covered in a silver shell, and it also has engraved patterns. The fact that she didn't hear the dragon emerge behind her is what worries her. The dragon then transformed into winds, just like Kushala, but it surrounded the dragon and she appeared in front of Naruto as an adult female with red silver eyes and short, white hair that was slightly angled. She is wearing a dress that resembles black wrappings with red lining and patterns. She also has tight black pants with red patterns, a black scarf with the same red pattern, and black sandals. Her arms are wrapped in the same wrappings. The woman held out her hands and a bright silver light appeared between them, saying, "Since you found a way to defeat Kushala, let's get this over with. My name is Ortalaji, the Wind Temptress, the Storm Harbinger and Dragon of the Azura Sky. I give to you the will to summon the Wind Dragons." She quickly vanished from her mindscape after putting a hand over the light and absorbing it, long since forgetting the mud on her body. Actual world Naruto noticed something heavy on her as she started to stir. As the morning sun started to beat down on her, she shifted to get the light out of her eyes. An egg was resting on her. When she opened her eyes, the egg was somewhat dark and about the size of her lower arm. In order to test the egg, Naruto tapped it. Sure enough, it was as hard as a rock, but strangely, she heard a tap inside. "What the a-okay?" The mindscape of Naruto in Naruto's imagination. The house has grown larger, and the dragons within were holding a meeting in the meeting room. After Tia gave her and the other two a headache, Leviathan messaged her head, saying, "So let me get this straight up." Leviathan shouted at Tia, "Not only did you give her a pseudo-wyvern egg, but you gave her the vicious one of them all." Tia simply waved her remark away and drank some tea. Ignoring the looks she got, Tia said, "I had to give her a gift and it is her 12th birthday and she passed her 3rd test, in addition to the fact that I believe she can handle the dragon. You gave her a pseudo that can easily defeat Kushala and Hydra combined, not to mention even Fatalis had a problem fighting that type of dragon." Orta expressed her worries. Tia calmed the 2 dragons by saying, "The previous one was shunned and hated everything, besides this one can be raised properly, not to mention, not all of these types of dragons are vicious. So what are you going to teach her, Orta?" "From what I've seen, I will have to help her develop her wind manipulation. She doesn't have to increase her wind power, but she can use wind to increase her speed and her close range attacks," Orta said to both of them. "If I train her enough, she can learn to glide and later fly. If she practice, I could throw in a few wind techniques." Tia gestured to Volvagia, who was considering what she could teach Naruto, and asked, "What about you?" Concerned about how long she would have to wait to teach her how to use plasma, Volva remarked, "Nothing much, but I will teach her the advanced forms of the dragon claw and wielding fire with her hands. I should be able to teach her the wind now that she has it. But Orta must first become accustomed to Naruto before she can learn plasma." Volva pondered. Tia glanced at the water dragon and said, "Leviathan, anything you could teach Naruto? She can already will water to form around her, so I will have to teach her the more advanced forms of the flowing dragon and the current. With Orta here, she can learn how to wield ice, but we will have to wait." Tia nodded in agreement that we must wait. "What about you?" The 3 of them laughed a little when he said, "Me. I could teach her the art of war and tactics." Tia had to give it some serious thought before she remembered something. "I could start with her boil training." Actual world Jiraiya said, "So you have no idea where that egg came from?" Naruto nodded in response. If I had to guess, it might be a gift from your inner friends. Cradling the egg in her arms, Naruto remarked, that is believable. She's wondering if the egg will hatch soon because she can still feel some taps coming from inside. Any idea what we should do now? Jiraiya shifted his seat and considered the situation. Not wanting his student to be bound by weak genin, Jiraiya said, taking you back to Konoha isn't a good idea. The old man will probably waste away your talents by placing you in a genin team. Then he recalled that Naruto is 3 years older than the clan heirs, so returning to Konoha is not a good idea. We will have to up your training again. I can take it. Naruto recognized the intensity of Jiraiya's training. Naruto moaned when she was told she would have to carry heavier weights. First we will have to increase your weights. Jiraiya would have continued until they heard a cracking sound. None of that now. You were able to keep up with me in our fights. I could continue on with teaching you sealing and you can practice your bullet seal. I will have to push you a lot harder than I did before and I can teach you the Rasen. Naruto noticed that the egg was crumbling when he looked down. It's no longer actually training. The creature that protruded its head from the egg caught Naruto's attention. It appears to her that the creature resembles a cat after cracking open one of the egg's shells. Naruto saw the creature leap out, cling to him, and purr. It's about kitten-sized. Jiraiya pointed to the black cat with yellow eyes, sharp claws, black fur with some scales, and a tail and remarked, that doesn't look like an ordinary cat. Oddly enough, there are tiny red webbings on the side of the front paws. Jiraiya reached for the kitten, but the cat slashed its claw at her hand, leaving a gash. It looks more like one of your dragonsa, she said. Ouch. He noticed a deep scratch on his hand. It sure has sharp claws. From Naruto's perspective, the hatchling's hissing at Jiraiya was adorable. Naruto picked up the cat-like dragon and remarked, it doesn't seem that sharp. While being held in her arms, the hatchling purred without resisting. Besides, she's cute. Jiraiya remarked, Shay, it's kind of difficult to recognize the gender of a dragon. Naruto simply shrugged. Naruto remarked, I had a feeling. The dragon's claws were indeed sharp, but her skin could withstand it. Naruto bit her thumb and directed chakra toward her teeth, saying, I need help. Summoning jutsu. Naruto called forth Tia, who was transformed into a lizard. Tia gestured to the dragon that Naruto was holding and said, I see you received your present. As he treated the scratch that the black hatchling had given him, Jiraiya remarked, you gave her that dragon. Tia groaned as she heard the same conversation she had with the other three and said, well, I had to give her something. Jiraiya remarked, you could have given her a technique or a special ability. Tia was considering this. Nope. This is the best one I can give her, not to mention she is exiting the hatchling stage and into childhood, Tia replied. Inquiring as to why, from Tia's perspective, she was still regarded as a newborn or hatchling, Naruto remarked, wait, childhood, I'm now 12 years old and entering early teenage years. Tia explained to Naruto the phases he would be going through, saying, well, you have dragon blood and you age slowly, and I mean very slowly. Right now you have exited the hatchling stage. As of now your eyes will develop soon and your body will be able to combine elements. Both Jiraiya and Naruto were perplexed by the statement. Your strength will be increased, skin hardens, element control strengthens, senses sharpen, and you will be scarier. Naruto asked, not liking it at all, what do you mean scarier? Am I going to get uglier? Tia tried to explain her abilities to the two, saying, no, that's not what I meant. You know that feeling when someone's so powerful in front of you, you can't help but run away. Jiraiya considered it. It sounded like Tia would be releasing her killing intent around him with the ability she was explaining, but it is simply her presence. Tia informed Naruto of her new talent, saying, Naruto's presence will scare people or normal people, but ninja will feel uncomfortable around her. Jiraiya wanted to know why she had this kind of ability, so she asked, why would she need this? Tia explained to them what this ability could do. As dragons are known to be frightening creatures, and it is very true, just standing in my presence in my true form will send you two into a year-long coma. Recalling her experiences with the dragons, Naruto remarked, wait, hold on a second. Jiraiya and I have encountered some dragons and not once have we felt scared. Yes, he have, but you only met them mentally and meeting them here will guarantee you feeling uncomfortable, Tia replied. Naruto simply nodded, realizing that she would be frightening many people. She need not be concerned about being pursued by others. Naruto inquired about the hatchling in her arms, asking, what about Thisa, what is she? Before Naruto interrupted her, Tia remarked, well, that is one of the deadliest pseudo-wyvern or false dragon there is. Gazing down at the black dragon in her arms, Naruto questioned, what do you mean false dragon? Well, they have the ability to fly, but it is just a name that carried down in time. They are more vicious and deadlier than a normal wyvern. They rely more on physical attacks, and this one here is from one of the deadliest of them all. Tia stated with some pride that she had been given an example. When Naruto heard the dragon purr, he scratched the side of its ears and asked, "And what is its name?" Tia informed Naruto of the dragon's name, saying, "Well, the previous one was named Nargacuga. You can give her a different name if you like." Cradling the hatchling in her arms, Naruto remarked, "I suppose I can name her that." Tia walked over to the hatchling and said, "Good to know." Tia touched the hatchling's back and performed some hand seals, thinking, "I might as well do this right now." Naruto observed that all of the traits that make Lil Kuga a dragon vanished, leaving only a kitten. "You should keep this a secret." Knowing that he will need to significantly increase her training if she is going to have a dragon, Jiraiya remarked, "Yeah, it would bring Naruto a lot of attention if news of her having a dragon gets out. Anything she needs to know about looking after a hatchling? Well, she will need nourishment like milk and meats. Fish are preferable over time. Little Kuga here will start trying to hunt little animals like squirrels, mice, rabbits and fish. If it goes into water training, just add weights to help build up speed strength it already got." Tia stated that Naruto should look after the tiny hatchling as she poofed out of existence. Tia said, "Well, I'll see you later, Naruto. I have to prepare for tonight's session." With Naruto behind him and the small kitten in her arms, Jiraiya picked up his bag and said, "Come on, we should get to the next country." Nighttime mindscape. When Tia first appeared in her thoughts, Naruto was following Hera more accurately. Tia pulled her away. In her human form, Tia stated, "Okay, we are going to start with your first sub-element training. Since you exited the hatchling stage and into childhood, your body is able to combine elements. Since water and fire were your first before you exited that stage, that we should start working with the boil or vapor, if you want to call it that." When it came to learning a sub-element, Naruto asked Tia, "So how am I going to use vapor?" Tia showed Naruto the jutsu hand seals and said, "Simple, your body will do the work while I show you the hand seals. It's called boil style. Solid fog jutsu. This jutsu allows you to breath out some fog that is highly corrosive depending on your skill on using it. This the basic form of the boil style, so you will have to build it up from there. You will have to create your own. For now, just practice the jutsu until I see that I deem it fit enough." Naruto nodded and completed the hand seals before finishing with the horse seal. When Naruto uttered the words, "boil style, solid fog jutsu," a mist emerged from her mouth and dispersed throughout the field. "Let's see ya." Tia reached into the fog to find out Naruto performed the horse seal and willed the fog away, saying, It is satisfactory but needs improvement. You can also dissipate the fog with the horse seal." Tia walked away from Naruto and toward Leviathan, who was observing her training, saying, "Good, keep practicing, I'll be right back." Leviathan watched Naruto and told Tia, she's going to need the ice style to defeat the lightning tyrant. Tia left that open-ended, and Leviathan realized that she would require additional training to use her eyes. We will have to wait a month for her to learn the basics and another 2 to get some control over ice. As for her Isa, she'll need another sub-element for later. As she stepped into the field, Volva called, "What about plasma?" She has excellent control over her flames, but she still needs control over wielding it. Tia looked up at the sky and reflected, saying, "Plasma is strong and deadly, but she will need more control over heat, and ice is easier for now." Tia gave Leviathan and Volvagia a nod of agreement and said, "For the time being, she will practice her boil jutsu when her body produces ice and plasma. You two can review her training." Teaching Naruto the next phase of her element training excited Volva. As for Orda, Tia turned to face an empty area and observed Orda coming into view as the wind blew softly. You can teach her how to use wind more effectively, and you can teach her that technique as well. As she watched Naruto blow out a fog, Orda remarked, "The wind Vela, yeah, I can teach her that." She could see that a normal person would melt to the ground. Tia's statement, "Alright, it is settled," captured everyone's interest. The 3 dragons nodded in agreement as they said, "You 3 will start teaching Naruto mastery level manipulation on your elements, so the next form of sub-elements will be easier for her." The 3 dragons were perplexed when they heard, "As for you sis, do as you please." When the other 3 dragons turned to face her, Tia turned to look behind her and saw a taller, identical-looking figure dressed in armor made of a combination of Naruto and Leviathans. Just before disappearing, the woman said, "I'll train her when I'm beckoned to fight with her." Volva, who didn't recognize her or understand why Tia called her sister, asked, "Who is she and what is she doing here?" Recalling what her predecessor had told her, Orda remarked, "She is someone that is beyond us." Volva appeared perplexed when she said, "I heard rumors about dragons passing their mantle to dragons like us and becoming swords." Leviathan recalled her predecessor and remarked, That's right, Volva here didn't have a predecessor, she earned her rank by fighting for it. Volva, who dislikes being excluded, questioned, so what has this to do about the previous boss dragons? In reference to the dragons that transform into swords, Orda told Volva, after they handed down their status as boss dragon they become living swords or sentient weapons if they want to. Volva nodded, then recalled what the woman had said. And you just met Tia's predecessor, and if memory served me right, her power far surpasses ours. That's what made Orda and Leviathan tense up and look concerned. What did she mean beckon to fight with her? Well. Orda broke the news to Volva, saying, well, you see back then, dragons beckon other dragons. Volva said, that doesn't seem bad. However, Leviathan was the one who informed her of the situation. Leviathan reminded Volva of her predecessor, the Ice Dragon King, who vanished from the world, and said, she means that someone else with the same type of sword as Naruto can call in her power. The following day Jiraiya and Naruto were together, and Naruto was growing accustomed to the weights she was wearing. She is unaware of what she was wearing, but she is aware that it was at least 3 times her weight and that her tiny Kuga was contentedly dozing inside Naruto's kimono. Where are we going, sensei? Naruto asked Jiraiya, who was once again bandaging his hand after the kitten scratched him when he attempted to wake him up this morning. Naruto nodded, recalling how she had destroyed her previous training ground with a misplaced fireball that was completely white and destructive. We're heading to the east side of Fire Country and start training you. Kami knows that training you will cause major damage to the area, so the ocean is a good place and no one will get hurt with a little of water. The waterfall was transformed into a brand new waterslide. With the exception of Naruto tending to her kitten and the fact that the kitten was scratching hard objects, the trip was quiet. Jiraiya and Naruto both explained this as a cat's natural desire to scratch. Practicing lightning manipulation, Naruto said, so I will have to channel lightning chakra through that rock. Jiraiya informed Naruto, who was teaching her advanced lightning manipulation, yes, the goal is for you to pass the lightning charge through that rock. When they got to the beach, he had to teach her this first thing. Naruto nodded and used her hands to channel lightning chakra, building it up as much as she could. Jiraiya was instructing a Naruto shadow clone on ceiling when he heard the original Naruto make a crackling noise. He turned to see Naruto pointing at the rock with her right hand outstretched, holding white lightning. He wanted to see what she was doing, but there was so much of it that he could see the lightning clearly. It was too much, indeed. With her hand extended, Naruto was accumulating lightning chakra. She held it as long as she could until she was unable to hold it any longer. Then she hit the rock with it. Jiraiya was taken aback when Naruto struck the rock that went through it with lightning. Her attack drilled a clean hole through the rock instead of absorbing into it, and when it struck the rock bed behind the rock it passed through. It exploded. He was not prepared for Naruto to be knocked back by the force of her own blow. Naruto exclaimed, "Whoa," as she picked herself up from the sand and surveyed the destruction she had caused. Let's try that again. She realized what she had done and wreaked even more havoc around her an hour later. When she was destroying the place, Jiraiya was sitting a few hundred meters away from Naruto or anything close by. According to his observations, she accidentally developed her own technique, which is an A rank. After she realized the catastrophe she had caused for herself, he watched Naruto experiment with her new technique and shoot it into the sea. She is making it appear faster, stronger, and more dangerous. Based on what he can see, this technique is unique to her because it involves manipulating elements and shapes. She knew how to manipulate shapes, which he was unaware of, but it would save him the trouble. He then noticed her falling to the sand as she ran to Naruto. Kuga leapt onto her stomach and fell asleep. Kuga was just enjoying her rising pillow while Naruto was trying to breathe as much as he could. Jiraiya observed her breathing heavily from her continuous use of her recently acquired technique and remarked, "Learned your lesson yet? From what I seen, you created an S-rank long and medium range technique, and from what I saw, it is a forbidden jutsu." As she rests and considers what she needs to do to hone her new jutsu, Naruto remarked, "I still got to work it out first before I can use it in a battle. Railgun, or Riruhou." As he demonstrated how to seal a shadow clone, Jiraiya asked, "What?" As she practiced her technique, Naruto looked around and saw the mess she had made. "My personal technique, Riruhou. You seen what that technique did?" Jiraiya nodded her technique in agreement, saying, "Though I say it is more on the demolition side." Naruto looked up at Jiraiya and held up his hand, saying, "I think I should teach you something on the close-range jutsu." She then watched as the chakra in his hand began to circle and eventually formed into a ball. Jiraiya has already revealed her father to Naruto, which has heightened her ambition to become Hokage and outdo her father. This little number here is called the Rasengan. Your father has created this technique, and as you saw, it is pure chakra manipulation and shape manipulation. It was Naruto who examined the Rasengan. She extended her hand, creating a sphere of fire. It's pure chakra. Jiraiya produced a scroll and a water balloon with the words, "Yes, there are 3 steps with this jutsu and the first one is this." Naruto simply stared at him blankly. With a vacant expression, Naruto said, "You keep water balloons in scrolls." Jiraiya showed Naruto the water balloon he was holding and said, "Well, I was planning to teach you the Rasengan and I got this when we were in the previous town." The water balloon began to expand, began to bubble, and finally burst out. "Now watch closely. Now what did you see?" Naruto informed Jiraiya of what she had observed, saying, "You burst the balloon with chakra." Jiraiya took another water balloon out of the scroll and said, "Good eyes." Jiraiya instructed Naruto to create another shadow clone and took it to steady ceiling, saying, "Just try not to burn yourself out again." After finding a crab, little Kuga went to play with it. Naruto examined the balloon and nodded. She tried to force the balloon to burst out by channeling her chakra into it and then into the water, but she was unsuccessful. This isn't working. He blew up the balloon with chakra. She pondered how Jiraiya created that whirlpool-like ball of chakra that spun faster and faster to cause the balloon to burst. Spin the chakra. She then began to rotate the water inside the balloon. As she watched the balloon expand and spin, she continued to reflect on the Rasengan. Perhaps if I include more spins. Naruto, ceiling was being taught by Jiraiya when he heard a pop. With a simple laugh, he pulled out his scroll and threw it at Naruto. As soon as she popped the water balloon, Naruto was examining her hand. She caught one of Jiraiya's scrolls. Naruto nodded, took out a rubber ball, and started to inspect it. Inside is the second step. Examine how she intends to pop it rather than what it is composed of. This one is harder than the previous one. This one doesn't have any water in it, and to make it harder, the dense material the ball is made of is going to make it hard. After a few minutes, Jiraiya noticed Naruto holding nothing in her hands and heard a loud pop sound. She simply created flames in her hands while turning back to face him. "This is natural to me. She will become proficient sooner than I anticipated." After a week as anticipated, Naruto has mastered the technique. In just 1 week he saw that Naruto had developed a keen sense of observation. Every time she makes a mistake, she corrects it and makes it better. He experienced what Tia was describing as well. Initially, he felt uneasy around Naruto, but eventually he adjusted. People began to move away from Naruto or avoid her when she went into town, which she liked. After she mastered the Riruhou, her new personal technique, it became her favorite. She had already considered an overload technique and variations from close to very long range. She has already begun to work on a close range technique that would work with a Rasengan, but it is still in the early stages and is a little challenging. It is nearly impossible. It's not just her who got better. Although Jiraiya is no longer a threat to her, and her little Nargacuga, also known as Kuga, is the size of a typical cat, Naruto still gets scratched for attempting to pick her up and misses her little kitten whenever she is hungry. The throwing knives that Naruto chose for her training on seals, or the bullet seal, proved to be the best choice because they are invisible. Jiraiya was initially hurt when he attempted to grasp the knife and ended up with it stuck in his hand, but Naruto helped him. She also learned how to create tracking seals, privacy seals, gravity seals, and seals to suppress demon chakra. She was also able to identify seals and deconstruct their functions. Jiraiya discovered that Naruto had a talent for seals. In fact, she is a multi-talented kunoichi who possesses medical jutsus and seals, but without seduction. If he tells Tsunade that, or even better, how he knew about teaching her seduction, she will kill him. She developed a jutsu that allows her to blow out a ball of steam from her mouth that expands outwards upon impact, as well as one that produces a jet of steam from her mouth thanks to her boil training. Regarding the boil training, Tia was correct. She needed to learn how to create her own jutsu. After learning about the benefits of the gravity seal, she discarded her weighted bodysuit in order to make the seal appear like a dragon with its body coiled into a kanji for 3, which is 3 times her weight. She had a shadow clone imprinted on her lower back. It would change to 4 kanji if she wanted to increase the gravity. She wants people to see a dragon if she wants them to see her seal, even though the dragon only appears when it is activated and deactivated. In addition, Orta gave her a seal that would make her movements heavy, which she found affected by the wind. To add to the excruciating training, the dragon appears to have sharp-looking claws and a windshield around its body to move regularly, and normally, she had to use wind chakra, which depleted her chakra. Right now Jiraiya told Naruto, who was barking at him from the ground, "You're moving slowly, you know that." After taking a nasty blow from Jiraiya, Naruto got up and exclaimed, "Hey, I haven't quite got used to this wind seal and gravity seals yet." Despite feeling the blow, she was unharmed. In fact, "I'm relieved that my skin is growing more robustly than it was a week ago." As she stood in her flowing stance, Naruto pondered. He started to attack Naruto, but Jiraiya called out, "Alright, get ready." Naruto was aware that her little dragon wanted to assist her in the battle. But little Kuga was watching from the sidelines. Naruto started to adapt more and more as Jiraiya continued his attack, and that's when he noticed her eyes. Her eyes had a cat-like slit and were golden. He persisted and saw that she began to resist. She began to push Jiraiya away at that point. He was frightened when he saw that her hands were covered in chakra. He felt his arm go dead after using it to block a palm thrust to his stomach. Jiraiya leapt back to examine his arm and discovered that she had used chakra scalpels after cutting his tendons. Jiraiya felt as though she was deciphering Naruto's eyes as she looked up at him. Her eyes look at me as if she were examining me. She cut, Jiraiya thought as he flexed his right arm. She hardly cut it all the way through. My arm has some sensation with the additional chakra scalpel jutsu. Naruto assumed her flowing stance. The danger of that position has only increased. When he was fighting her, Jiraiya had to constantly stay out of Naruto's hands, and in order to be more cautious, he had to move faster. It resembled a Hyuga battle. Naruto halted and sagged to the ground, spreading his eagles, and said, "Okay, Naruto, you can take a break." Kuga approached Naruto with a distressed look on her face, but Naruto reassured the hatchling by simply petting her. Jiraiya went to contemplate Naruto's training while sitting by a tree. The first thing that came to mind was how perceptive she is. She tends to pick things up quickly because she learns them on the fly or through experience. Other than teaching her earth jutsus, he already has little to teach her. The rest she can learn from her dragons. He only has earth jutsu and sealing left, and she would outshine him if she could get better at the Rasengan given her chakra imbalance. He doesn't think Naruto will learn senjutsu or sage mode, but if she does, she will undoubtedly outshine him. At the moment, she is limited to observing her battles with the two dragons of lightning and earth that are still alive. He will complete her training in a year. If everything goes according to plan, perhaps he could allow her to explore the elemental country alone for a year or two so she can get experience. Then her eyes came to mind. They were undoubtedly her dragon eyes, or whatever they are called. One thing about dragons is that they are highly perceptive animals. When she activated her eyes during his battle with Naruto, she began to fix and modify her stance as necessary, evade every attack that might have sent her flying, and determine what she needed to do to defeat him. In essence, he thought he was up against a Hyuga and a Uchiha combined. He already has to put in a lot of effort to avoid her attacks. At the age of 12, Jiraiya can only speculate as to whether he will be able to compete with Naruto once she has finished her training. Jiraiya called out to Naruto, who simply waved and pushed herself up despite her body's pleas for rest. "Okay kid, let's get back with taijutsu. In order for her to survive, I will need to push her past her breaking point." Before he started his unrelenting attack on Naruto, pushing her past her breaking point, he gave it some thought. The mindscape. The dragon smiled when Tia, who was once more organizing Naruto's memories, saw that the scroll's writings were becoming more detailed. At last, Naruto has turned on her dragon eyes. From now on, things will be simpler. Before returning to the task of arranging Naruto's memories, Tia paused to reflect. After a month, Jiraiya and Naruto were fighting once more when Naruto took off her wind seal and gravity. During this battle, Naruto had her battle kimono, wearing armor and carrying a katana. Jiraiya was interested in her overall fighting prowess. In the middle of a field, Jiraiya waited for Naruto to show up. Even though he taught her lethal jutsus, he made sure he couldn't detect her, and she is becoming quite skilled at it. He knew what jutsu she was going to use when he heard a lightning-like sound and felt a buildup of chakra in the quiet field. He heard a loud explosion where he used to be and quickly substituted, knowing that if he took that attack directly, he would be badly beaten since Naruto was still in position and the ground was engraved from where he was to where the attack was fired. He didn't bother to go look for the source. When the Naruto, who fired the Riruhou, poofed out of existence, a frown came to his face. She learned to make better use of her shadow clones. As he leapt into the air to dodge another Riruhou that nearly struck him and exploded when it struck a rock, Jiraiya pondered. He flew away from the explosion's force, but he managed to balance himself in midair and make a safe landing. Is she attempting to murder me? When he heard a hissing sound, he turned to see the source on the ground. An explosive note that was more fully encircling him and connected to another explosive note. Yes, she is attempting to murder me. Before the explosive circle engulfed Jiraiya in flames, he had one final thought. A few meters from where Jiraiya was trapped in a trap, Naruto was clearly visible on a rock. She sighed as she felt Jiraiya behind her and turned to face the smoking remnants. Without bothering to look back, Naruto remarked, "I figured that something like that won't get you." Jiraiya smiled as Naruto glanced over her shoulder to reveal her golden slitted eye to her. "I noticed that your second Riruhou wasn't aimed directly at me, and I figured that you had something planned." Jiraiya and Naruto both poofed out of existence after saying, "It would seem we think alike." For an hour, the same thing kept happening during the fight. Each one killed in a different way. Jiraiya simply cornered Naruto. When he attempted to kill her, Jiraiya was beheaded, burned, drowned, stabbed, impaled, and transformed into a pincushion. However, each time Jiraiya and Naruto find themselves in a tight spot, they wind up as clones. He said, "Go all out and try to make it like your life depends on it." But now he regrets saying that for this fight because Jiraiya knew she was trying to kill him. Jiraiya turned to face the real Naruto as she raised her palm and willed a Rasengan in her hand because he knew that if this fight went on, it would last the rest of the day. Naruto simply turned his head away as he joked, "Bored already?" Jiraiya lifted his palm and willed a Rasengan, saying, "Don't worry kid, if you were fighting anyone else, they would have been dead the first attempt with the explosive circle." Naruto grinned and pumped more chakra in her hand, somewhat surprised, saying, "You know this will just end up as a stalemate if we do this." As her Rasengan suddenly jolted with her new technique, Naruto remarked, "I figured I could test my new technique on you." In the middle of the spiral, the Rasengan started to retain an electrical charge. "It's not complete. I figured that if I had more training I could complete it." Jiraiya questioned why she didn't have a high control of lightning in the first place and responded, "Your father also had an affinity with lightning, which does explain your high control of lightning." He pumped more chakra into his Rasengan to make it stronger, but why does it have a white color when her control over lightning is almost perfect right now? Both opponents held their ground, waiting for an opportunity to launch their own Rasengan attack. On the west side of the field, we see Naruto holding her element Rasengan, which is a lightning version of Rasengan, and sparking every few seconds. Jiraiya is on the east side of the field, and she has a Rasengan on steroids that is 3 times larger than the original Rasengan. Just before the wind blew, the field was completely silent at that moment. Both of them charged at one another, launching their individual Rasengans at one another. Udama, lightning style. Rasengan. As both Rasengans pushed harder and pumped more chakra into their own Rasengan, sparks and chakra flew across from each other as they fought for supremacy. Both had to end in a brutal manner because they were at a standstill. An explosion that sent Jiraiya and Naruto flying back was the result of channeling a lot of chakra into an attack. Jiraiya was okay aside from the scrap and cuts, but he was skipping across the ground and started to roll before stopping when he struck a rock. In contrast, Naruto broke through a rock after hitting it, but she is unharmed except for the bruises. Oh man, how hard was that rock? Well, perhaps she struck the rock with more force as she started to use what little chakra she had left to heal her own bruises. Naruto yelled, "You had to use my powered-up version of Rasengan, didn't you?" As he hobbled over to Naruto for medical help, Jiraiya retorted, "You expect me to survive a lightning version of that technique with a regular Rasengan? I was lucky I was flung back." Jiraiya sat before Naruto while she dressed the minor wounds and scrapes. A serious Jiraiya remarked, "You know, if we go back to Konoha, the Hokage will have to figure out what to rank you." As Naruto treated Jiraiya's minor wounds, she remarked, "I know, I just need more time to complete the other 2 tests. What rank do you think I will have when I get back?" Jiraiya's hand was messaging his chin in a contemplative manner. "From my near-death experiences." Naruto scratched her back sheepishly, recalling the numerous times she had come dangerously close to killing Jiraiya. Your rank would be Elite Junin and bordering Sannin. A few more intense learning than you will have the rank Sannin." A little perplexed, Naruto uttered, "Learning? Don't you mean training?" Naruto nodded her head, recalling her training with a new technique. "No, I mean learning since you started using the gravity seal and the wind-resistant seal. A simple movement is training to you. All I do is just teach you a jutsu and you learn it from the spot and improve it." Naruto sighed at the lack of challenge in her life, saying, "It isn't even challenging if I just learn to do a simple technique." Naruto reassured her that she would have more to learn, saying, "Don't worry about it kid. When you start with the sub-element training then you will be kept occupied. So should we get on with the test now or later?" The mindscape. Following their discovery of a hotel in a nearby town and their feeding of Kuga, Jiraiya and Naruto entered Naruto's mindscape, where the raging winds had subsided. Although the ocean is now calm, lightning is still occurring and the sky is obscured by clouds. They both turned to face Volva at the house and said, "Finally you two got here to finish the test." Volva pulled Tia behind her and said, "Let's get this over with so I can sleep without lightning waking me up every minute." As Leviathan left the house, Naruto questioned her, "What's up with her?" Leviathan sounded a little irritable and sour when he said, "She hasn't got much sleep since she got here and I would have to agree with her." "I wouldn't blame them." Naruto turned to face Orta as she demonstrated her mastery of the wind veil by shimmering into existence. "I've only been here a month and I am starting to lose my sleep." When everyone got there, they saw a field with some boulders and rocks scattered throughout it. Volva pushed Tia to call forth the lightning tyrant dragon, saying, "Okay. Do your thing and get this over with." She had fulfilled her duty by gathering chakra, condensing it, and launching it into the air. After completing her work, Tia complained, "You didn't have to push." "Any advice?" Naruto inquired, hoping to recall the moment they took off following Kashala's arrival. As she and everyone else fled once more, Tia said, "Yeah, keep moving and strike fast." At least they offered her some guidance. As the clouds grew darker and lightning struck every 2.5 seconds, the sky grew darker. Naruto didn't have enough time to protect herself from the blast because the lightning concentrated in one spot and then shot down to the ground. The dragon in front of her, when the dust fell, was the size and shape of a massive horse with a dragon-like mouth. It has blue engraved patterns on its body and is glowing white. It has 2 horns on its head that point back, and it has a glowing white mane that extends down its back and tail. Naruto questioned, "Are you really a dragon?" At that moment, Naruto heard the aforementioned dragon say, "I get that a lot, but yes, I am a dragon." It sounded as though its voice had an echo as it glowed white and surrounded itself with lightning. Kirin said, "My name is Kirin and I am the lightning tyrant dragon. Prepare yourself." Then, in a flash, it sprang out at Naruto, roaring, howling, steed, or whatever it sounded like. She immediately channeled wind chakra in her tenketsu points to enable her to move quickly after being launched into a shattered rock. The battle wasn't really a battle. Naruto was the mouse in what resembled a game of cat and mouse. Everything she did had to matter. If she made a single mistake in her movement, Kirin's tackle would cause her to feel a tremendous amount of pain and electricity running through her body. The rocks she was concealing herself with were sufficient to prevent an electrical shock. After running past each rock and injecting it with lightning chakra, Naruto proceeded to the next one. Jiraiya questioned, "What is she doing now?" inquiring as to why she was squandering chakra on rocks. Leviathan gestured to her eyes, telling Jiraiya, "She figured it out." Jiraiya turned to face Naruto and noticed that her eyes were golden slits. "You must have noticed it when you were fighting her when her eyes are like that." As Naruto stood atop a rock and stabbed it with her sword, Volva smiled and said, "It's the power of observation." As Kirin launched a lightning bolt at Naruto, it was deflected to the sword and continued to be channeled. Tia remarked, "The dragon eye has no special ability other than noticing things from the spot." As everyone watched Kirin's lightning spread to each rock and ground it, Tia said, "She will be able to recognize things that no one else will see." You saw what she did with her Riruhou technique. She doesn't have a high affinity with lightning. It was merely the observation of what she felt in training. In short, she will be learning and mastering jutsus from the spot. She has passed this test. When all of its lightning was grounded, Kirin fell and turned to face Naruto. Just before it glowed white and vanished, Kirin uttered the words, "Defeated," in a flash. Naruto removed her sword from its sheath and stood on the rock. The sky started to light up once more, and Naruto saw the lightning dragon boss appear in the same way that Kirin had. The dragon in question has a similar shape to Kirin, but it is twice as big and appears more agile once the radiance fades. This one didn't appear to be a dragon. It resembled a wolf more. It has white fur, yellow-looking armor, and blue skin. In addition to covering its front legs and back, the yellow armor spiked out from its chest to above its shoulder blades, down its back, and down its tail. It also covered its lower jaw, which spiked at the front down at an angle pointing ahead, and ultimately it had 2 horns that pointed ahead and went along the spine of its back down to its tail, which had some spikes pointing upward. Also, it covered its hind legs. Its chest area was covered in white fur, while the side of its neck that ran along the back had blue plates. In the front there is white fur on the back of both the front and rear legs. The claws on its legs are what caught her eye. It had sharp green claws on the sides to add more sweeping damage, but the claws on the paws were fine. It must have earned its status as a lightning dragon boss based on what she can see. The dragon then glowed and contracted into an adult human as the light faded. A man wearing a white business suit and a blue tie appeared in its place. He had sickening yellow eyes, a wicked, feral grin, and very short, white hair that appeared to be pressed back. The man pulled a small booklet from his pocket and opened it to reveal something. "It's about time you got to summon me." He read something in the book and whistled when he was done. He pocketed the book and updated it, saying, "You broke the record of defeating Kirin in 3 minutes and 22 seconds. Jin extended his hand in a handshake and said, "Oh, I apologize for forgetting to introduce myself. My name is Jinuga, the Thunderwolf Wyvern, and you can call me Jin." Taking the hand, Naruto experienced a sudden surge of power that, oddly, felt the same as when she had gained power from Orda, Leviathan, and Volvagia. However, this time, she did not faint. Jin put his right arm around Naruto's neck and left the group, saying, as agreed, You will be able to summon the lightning dragons and me in battle, or if you feel lazy, do chores. I have so much I need to teach." Naruto was eager to learn new skills and asked, "What kind of techniques are you going to teach me?" Jin asked, "Techniques?" Before he started laughing as Naruto's excitement turned to fear, she realized that she would have to learn this in order to become a Hokage. Are techniques the only thing we can teach you? No, I will be teaching the world of business, and if you are up to it, the world of politics. Actual world. A shinobi who resembled a child wearing a battle kimono and a hunter nin mask stood a few miles from the town where Naruto was sleeping. There is a katana with a bronze 4-point star on the hunter's back. The sheath is dark blue and the hilt is light blue. The katana was trembling violently, which was odd. As though to reassure it, the hunter seized the sword to prevent it from trembling. The hunter let go of the sword when it ceased to tremble and remarked, "I know, I feel it too. Whatever it is as strong as I am, if not stronger." As he made his way to the town, he felt a formidable foe and remained silent. As he told himself, "No, I don't need their help, I need to do this on my own." You saying that this person is just like me. The mindscape of Naruto. Once more, Tia was going through the memories, arranging new scrolls that she knew had to do with politics or business. Politics was never her thing. It was too talkative, and she would much rather fight than give a speech. Tia heard her sister behind her and noticed that she was staring back at her when she said, "I sense him." As she returned to sorting the scrolls, Tia remarked, "Jin has just entered Naruto's mind and started teach the art of words." A very familiar power from her past prompted the woman to say, "Not him." Tia was in the middle of organizing the scrolls when she heard, "He's coming here with another human with dragon blood in their veins." Unaware of any other means of reviving the dragon blood, Tia remarked, "Who exactly has the power to bring the blood back in humans?" The only way to bring the blood back is to use the Bijuu's chakra, and we had to use the Kyuubi's chakra to do it. "No, there is another way." Naruto, weary of hearing how to reach a consensus, said, "I don't know, state the claim that it isn't legit and threaten him." Close. If the person doesn't have proof of marriage in writing, then it isn't legit, because it is only in words. If it is family honor, then tell them to go to hell, because honor doesn't exist, it's just a belief. Jin stated that he was explaining politics to Naruto. As of now, honor doesn't exist. All you have is your life, and that is all you own. Today's day and age, everything is done politically. That means everything is talked through and written down to solidify it. Signing your name on a piece of paper is like signing away your life. Naruto took these lessons to heart and said, "So now I have to be careful of what I sign." Jin gave Naruto his lesson until he noticed him vanish. "Yes, make sure you read the document first and search for loopholes that you can break through or things that shouldn't be in there. Remember, there are laws that have loopholes, you just need to find them. Not everything is fortified." It's morning already. Jin turned around and saw Tia, who appeared a little irritated. It should have been morning 12 hours ago. "What?" Jin inquired, unsure of the issue. Not liking what had happened, Tia remarked, "You changed the time of Naruto's mind to be twice as long. Do you have any idea of what that will cause?" Not caring that he had altered Naruto's thoughts, Jin remarked, "Yeah, I gave her more time for her to learn, and don't say that she will grow up too fast. She is already mature as it is for such a child, and aren't we supposed to be mature at that age? Besides, I have to make sure she is prepared when she goes back to her home." Tia simply sighed and started to worry as her sister started showing up more often and giving Naruto access to her power. According to what her sister has told her, the other way to bring back the dragon blood is for the dragon swords to give up their ability to fuse their blood with a human, which will bring back the dragon blood in humans. However, only a small number of dragons are capable of doing this. According to her memory, the water dragon sword vanished from the world, and the only dragon swords capable of doing this are Sunga, wind, Railgun Jaka, fire, Raijin, lightning, Kenkan, earth, and Yamato, darkness. If the process is successful, the human will have dragon blood and be able to use their power as a sword. Who relinquished their power is now the issue, given that his former form is now imprisoned within a blade known as the Kusanagi. Sunga is unlikely to relinquish his power. If the individual is deserving of Railgun Jaka's authority, he may cede it. Raijin is now in the vile handle form that the human gave him after losing his original form. Kenkan is divided and lacks the ability to bring the blood back to life in an attempt to regain his former form after losing it himself. Yamato consumes an infinite amount of chakra, but the wielder steals it. Railgun Jaka is the only dragon capable of reviving blood, but he is kept hidden from the public in order to be used. Numerous lesser dragon swords exist that possess the ability to partially restore blood life. Other than the Railgun Jaka, what other type of dragon sword has the ability to revive blood? As she kept thinking about who could bring the dragon blood back, Tia thought. Actual world Naruto had a terrible headache when he woke up from studying politics. As she listened intently to Jin's speech, she began to feel older. Kuga was sleeping on her in her dragon form when she felt weight on her. Little Kuga has the ability to deactivate and reactivate the genjutsu at will, Naruto discovered. She went about her morning routine after carefully picking up the hatchling and placing her on a pillow. When she was finished, she reflected on how long she had worn her tattered kimono. Following that thought, she examined the scrolls she had brought with her and opened it to reveal more. It is difficult to learn how to seal scrolls inside scrolls, but she managed to do it. She was searching for a scroll that said, clothes. She enjoyed wearing kimonos, but they didn't allow her to fight. The same cannot be said for her battle kimono. She changed into a white tank top with a navy blue coat featuring a white dragon on the back after taking a look at her wardrobe. Her entire outfit features a long, white, serpentine dragon with wings and light blue spine and wing webbings. She thought of one of her favorite-looking dragons. In order to protect her throwing knives with the bullet seal on, she strapped on some red fingerless gloves with bands attached to the end that has seals to complete her look. She wore black sandals, navy blue pants, and a braid that reached her shoulder blades with her bangs on the side. She went to Jiraiya's room after finishing packing her belongings, strapping her sword between her belt and pants, and waking the hatchling. Later on, it was found that Naruto unconsciously makes people uncomfortable by leaking her ability while she sleeps. It's unfortunate that she will cause the guests at the hotel to have a horrible evening sleeping away from her. As Jiraiya's solution to avoiding the uncomfortable feeling with the dragons inside of her and her new little guardian Kuga, she never felt alone, even though she sleeps alone. She started to feel as though something was about to happen while she was traveling to see Jiraiya, who she found out was staying at another hotel. Not like receiving a ton of money from Jiraiya for the third volume of his book about her tests, which is surprisingly a popular series. She was shocked to learn that the book was actually full of romance, comedy, action, and adventure, and she made a lot of money from those books. Indeed, she did read the books. After all, Jiraiya gave her special editions with extra smut and bonus material. In any case, she was excited and felt as though she was entering a battle. As she followed her instincts and jumped from rooftop to rooftop until she left town, she activated her dragon eyes and scared a lot of people in cat form. Kuga was pursuing her and keeping pace with her. She can see through it like a glass window, but she stopped when she got into a field of mist that could blind anyone else. As she surveyed the field, Naruto remarked, "You're going to have to do better than that." She sensed a presence there. Though it wasn't someone she knew, she seemed to be feeling herself. She heard the person's heartbeat skip a beat and said, "Another one like me? So, not only you have dragon blood in your veins, but you felt my presence as well." The strength of the person he was looking for was being felt by the other dragon blood user. She is just as strong as he is, if not more so. He first detected 4 powerful aspects in her, and his only concern is which of them he need not be concerned about. Second, he realized he would struggle against her after seeing her eyes. Third, anyone without dragon blood in their veins would be frightened by the waves of power she was radiating around her. Finally, the only weapon he has against her is the sword at her side, which is just as strong as his but not as awakened. He can tell she doesn't need it, though. When a ball of pink-red flames was pointed at him, he leapt from the tree he was hiding on. Volva attempted to use fire and wind to teach me about plasma. She didn't realize that I needed lightning to do plasma with the other two, and that combination produces inferno. She attempted to teach me the high-level elements, but I'm only working on the fundamentals for the medium-level elements. Looking at the person she was searching for, Naruto pondered. The sword he was holding was the first thing she saw about him. It appeared to be a typical katana, but she sensed something strong inside the blade, similar to the one on her side hip. As she pulled her katana from its sheath on her side and assumed the current stance, Naruto uttered the words, "I don't know what you want or why you came looking for me, but, you intrigued me." They stood staring at one another, searching for a gap. The hunter was having trouble because he knew that the woman was setting up a trap. Despite her loose and open stance, he initially believed the stance to be a counterattack stance, but after realizing it was an all-purpose stance, he changed his mind. While examining her opponent's stance, Naruto saw that it was perfect, no weaknesses or gaps whatsoever. The hunter was dressed in a battle kimono, which is designed to be worn in cold climates. He wore his Kiri hunter mask with his long bangs on the side and his hair in a bun. Given the bloodline purge in Kiri and the fact that the person in front of her has dragon blood in his veins, she was aware that the mask was a disguise. Therefore, it made sense to look for a disguise. Before she was pushed into her head, Naruto was staring at her opponent. Naruto looked at Tia, who was dressed in a battle kimono similar to hers and Leviathan's, and asked, "What Tia? Okay, what gives?" She failed to notice that Tia was taller than she was. "What gives, Tia? I was in the middle of a fight." Naruto saw that Tia doesn't laugh like that or at all when she chuckles. As she examined Naruto, the woman remarked, My, you are feisty. You have grown and gotten stronger over the years when I was first handed to you. I thought you were someone who would just use my power to fight your battles. Naruto now understood the identity of this woman. The woman stood in front of Naruto and nodded her head, saying, "You're that sword Tia gave me." Naruto recalled all the times she felt power surge through her from the sword during her fights, but she chose not to use it. "I gave you many chances to use my power during your tests, but not once did you accept my call. Why?" The woman arched an eyebrow and said, "Because it is not my power." As the woman smiled at Naruto and started to turn white, he replied, "I wanted to fight with my own power. I didn't want to have power that isn't mine. If I take power that isn't mine, then I will just be weak and dependent on that power, not ever noticing that I will be getting weaker over time." Naruto was shocked to learn that accepting her call would have resulted in the loss of her power. "Good answer. If you have ever taken my power during your tests, then you would have failed and had the dragon blood sealed away." As Naruto started to fade, Tia remarked, "Tia gave me to you to see if you were trustworthy to have the power of dragons in your veins, and from what I have seen, you are worthy of our power. Now that you passed my test, then I will loan you my power. Remember my name, for you will need me to fight with you in our future battles together. My name Issa." She and the hunter were still in their stance when Naruto returned to the ongoing battle. When she considered how this fight might turn out, she saw only two possibilities. First, it will be a protracted battle. Second, it will end quickly given that both were charging at one another and exchanging sword attacks. The second one has a higher chance of failing. The hunter observed the fluidity and accuracy of his opponent's attacks. He parried his opponent's sword away and then swung his own horizontally, although his opponent's back flipped beneath his sword and turned to attack his open back, which he blocked. He could see that the cut to his face was clean. He had several chances to get an opening during the lengthy fight, but she skillfully sidestepped it and nearly got him too. He attempted a sweep swing, but he barely avoided it as she ducked beneath it and swung at his exposed torso. During the battle, Naruto had a rhythm. He was as strong, quick, and experienced as she was, and that was the first thing she noticed about this fight. The only issue she could see was that he was criticizing her posture while she was criticizing his. With a sudden burst of speed, she only cut his mask in half, cutting vertically up to his face. She finished her task as the hunter jumped away from the attack, confirming her suspicions when the mask split open to reveal his face. His attractive face might have led her to believe he was a woman, but she could tell he was a man by the way he smelled. No, she was staring at his eyes, which she could tell were his dragon eyes because they were icy blue and had a cat-like slit. Naruto confirmed that he possesses dragon eyes by saying, "Hey, so you are just like me. If he has those eyes, man, this is going to be hard." The hunter's eyes were hard, as if he were engaged in an internal argument. When Naruto saw him collecting chakra into his sword as he leapt into the air, she raised one eyebrow and said, "I'm sorry, I will have to do this." He yelled, "Sit upon the frozen heaven, Haya Rinmaru," as he swung his sword at Naruto, aiming an ice-blue dragon with red eyes. When the ice dragon attacked, Naruto quickly sheathed her sword and gathered chakra into it, something she didn't anticipate doing at the start of the battle. As she slashed at the dragon, a brilliant light erupted from her sword, slicing through the ice dragon and causing it to fall apart. "Slice through the heavens, Excellion," she cried. While Naruto's sword transformed into an okatana with a white ribbon fastened to the guard, the hunter's sword changed slightly, becoming a little longer and featuring a crescent-shaped blade attached to a chain that is fastened to his sword. As if her sword were clutching her hand, Naruto asked herself, "Haya Rinmaru, now where have I heard that before? Excellion?" As Naruto felt a surge of power, Excellion said, "Yes, it is me. I did say we were going to fight together and you can call me Excel. Since we are fighting together, I guess we can have some of my power. Don't give me too much," though Naruto noticed that the hunter appeared somewhat cautious. She also wields a dragon sword, and judging from the appearance of it, she was given power by it. The hunter thought as his sword began to tremble, but he managed to keep it steady. The voice in the hunter's mind said, "No, she did not sacrifice her power." "What do you mean, Haya Rinmaru? You mentioned that giving up your power is the only way to restore the dragon blood." Speaking to his sword, the hunter said. The voice that is now known as Haya Rinmaru told the hunter, "Yes, that is the only way I know how, but the sword she is wielding isn't known to humans, because of the power it possesses. If she is holding that sword, then it is very unwise if we continue on with this fight if you want to be an enemy of dragons." In Naruto's mind, Excellion said, "So this is what Haya Rinmaru had been doing all this time." She saw the hunter sheath his sword, but she remained vigilant. "Relax, kid. If I remember correctly, Haya Rinmaru is very respectful and wouldn't want to betray his own kind." Naruto asked, "Who are you?" While she kept her hand on her sword in its sheath and saw that it was a little longer and that it was now an okatana. Haku said, Haku just Haku. Yours? Naruto recalled how many enemies her parents had and considered a last name. It would be too much trouble to kill them, even though she could bring back the Namikaze clan and have Iwa assassins target her daily. Then there's Uzumaki, her mother's maiden name. She is intelligent enough to understand that her mother has some adversaries, and that people may deduce that she is the daughter of two strong shinobi. She decided to change her name because she had always wanted to form her own clan, and now was the ideal moment to do so. Ryu. Ryu. Naruto blushed a little when Haku said, Maelstrom Dragon. Fitting name. She tried to hide it, but Haku's dragon eyes could see it as Naruto considered how she came to be who she is now. Haku questioned, so how did you become a holder of dragon blood? Naruto said, you know Wada, as Haku moved in to listen. I seriously have no idea. Haku's face fell to the floor immediately, but I do know that they came to me and started testing me. In his mind, Haku heard Rinmaru ask, testing her? Izzy. They're seeing if she is the one to bring back the dragons to this world, and from what I sense, she is nearly there. By that, what do you mean? Haku questioned the dragon, wondering why this girl was significant. When Rinmaru saw a cat wandering through the mist, using its nose to locate its master, he told Haku, I told you that dragons used to roam these lands until they were sealed away. You see, she has already obtained a guardian. Now remember that I told you that the dragon blood vanished and was never to appear again. Haku nodded in his mind as he saw Naruto blow away the mist, pick up the dragon in disguise, and pet her. His dragon eyes were able to see through the genjutsu, and he saw a dragon. There are ways to bring back the blood, and that is to sacrifice our power to bring it back, but there is a problem. What sort of issue is it? Haku started to wonder. Is that when we sacrifice our power you gain our power? Since I am the Ice Dragon King, then you will be strong with ice techniques, with water and wind just as strong. But everything else you will have to work on, and it will be difficult, but you might be able to learn them all in time. Haku nodded, knowing that it's hard to pick up other. She on the other hand has been chosen. One of the dragon bosses saw potential in her to will all elements, and I can see she has control over 4 elements. One more test, then she has completed the tests that were given to her until the Dragon King sees her if she is worthy of their power. Haku is cold-blooded and had to stifle a chill that ran up his spine. It just dawned on him that the individual standing before him is the matriarch of dragons. That's why he looked shocked when he saw the girl being flung away from Haku by a huge sword that he recognized as Kabikari Ha-Cha. Haku performed hand seals that formed an ice mirror in front of Zabuza, shielding him from a stream of pink-red flames that soon started to break through the ice. He grabbed Zabuza and Shunshin out of the way just before the flames broke through the ice. Damn it, Haku. If you wanted to get into a fight, you should have brought me along. Are you trying to get yourself killed? Haku yelled at Zabuza before turning to face Naruto, who was shot, and noticing that she was fine except for the ripped clothes that were healing on their own. Just before he felt a breeze and turned to his right, Zabuza said, What are you talking about, Haku? She didn't seem that strong. He saw the girl who should have been across the field, not by his side, with an outstretched hand to his face that appeared to be a backhand, which caused him to fly into a tree and break through it just before he fainted. Zabuza remarked, Okay, she is stronger than she looks. Haku said, I'm sorry that he jumped the gun. He smelled her blood, but he was only able to locate the wound where Zabuza had struck. My skin was actually pierced by him, though it was shallow, Naruto thought as she glared at the man who had pierced her skin, and that was sheer power. It's fortunate that I made the clothing repair seals as her clothing finished mending itself and removing the blood from the wound she had healed. Naruto pondered. Friend of yours? She inquired, her eyes displaying the expression, You're taking responsibility of this? Haku nodded and hung his head. Little Kuga was about to leap at the downed man, hissing at him, but Naruto grabbed her before she could harm him. Naruto asked, So how did you get dragon blood? And noticed that he was looking sad as he turned away. You don't have to tell me. Haku's icy blue eyes changed to chocolate brown ones as he said, No, I trust you enough to tell you. It started when I had a family. When Naruto told her about what had happened from him playing with his bloodline to his father calling in bloodline hunters and killing his mother to how he had called for help and Rinmaru had answered, killing his father and everyone else around him, she had a grim expression on her face. According to what she's been told, Rinmaru fell in love with a human long ago, and his blood is evident in his views. Haku became stronger after the Ice King transformed his blood into pure dragon. He told her the funny story of how he met Zabuza and how he beat the living daylights out of him by freezing his arms and legs in a block of ice. With Zabuza in tow, he later roamed the land. The man thought he could use him to kill the Mizukage, but he was too nice to kill, so he followed him around to avoid Kiri hunters. And here he is, petting the little dragon while conversing with Naruto. So you have been roaming around the elemental country for the last 6 years? Haku gave a nod. With that man and his 2 subordinates? Haku nodded once more as Naruto gestured to the unconscious Zabuza still lying beneath a tree. Haku shamefully nodded his head in response to Naruto's question. And you went to kill me when you thought that I was abusing or stealing power of dragons? The 2 of them then fell silent, with the exception of Kuga's purring as Haku petted and scratched him, that is, until both Haku and Naruto blushed as their stomachs growled. You want to go get something to eat? With a nod, Haku took Kuga in his arms and made his way to town. Naruto pointed to Zabuza and said, what about him? Haku openly stated that he did not enjoy fighting Zabuza's battles, saying, he got himself there and he will be alright. As she went to town with Haku, Naruto simply shrugged and shot a worried glance. Alongside Jiraiya, knowing that the dragon tamer can take care of herself, the man didn't immediately bother to look for her. He believes that only he, Tsunade, Salamander Hanzo, Old Man Sandaime, Orochimaru, and the other cages are capable of defeating her. However, he believes she will fight fiercely before losing. As he looked for the girl, Jiraiya asked himself, where is she? He had to take Naruto out of town so he could begin learning earth manipulation, that is, until he started to feel uneasy and thought it was Naruto, but he saw that it was much stronger than it had been the day before. He looked for indications of uneasiness and discovered that an open grill restaurant was the source. He saw that the building was deserted when he walked in, save for 2 people chatting and eating together, and a cat consuming a plate of fish beneath the table. As she bit into her spicy pork, Naruto questioned, so you defeated Zabuza in an all-out fight and he is your subordinate ever since? Haku took a bite out of a sushi he was frying and said, yeah, he's been asking me to kill the Mizukage, but I never liked the idea of killing. If the need for me to kill, then I will kill. As she finished her meal, Naruto inquired, any plans for the future? Knowing that she has her entire life ahead of her, Naruto nodded her head in agreement, saying, nothing as of now, since I will live for a very long time until someone kills me. Both turned to face Jiraiya at the end of the table and said, I see you have met someone to talk to. When she finished her meal, Naruto picked up Kuga, who was licking her paws, and said, oh hey Jiraiya. This is Haku and he has the same blood as me. Haku nodded, wanting to engage in combat with someone who could hold his own against him. Anyway, I was going to ask him to have an all-out fight with him if that is all right with you? Naruto asked. Jiraiya was a little concerned that someone might be similar to Naruto, but he decided to go along with it because the child seemed good-hearted and innocent. As he took a last bite of his last sushi, Haku said, just keep an eye on Zabuza. Jiraiya gave Naruto a stern look and warned her to watch Zabuza, while Naruto blushed and said, he tends to jump the gun and he already did attack Naruto-chan thinking she was an enemy. He was already aware of this Zabuza's identity and ensured that Naruto was not in danger. The 2 stood on opposite ends of an empty forest when they entered it. Any ground rules? Haku inquired as Naruto considered her options before releasing her Okatena's strap and setting it down. No swords? As she and Haku activated their dragon eyes, Naruto declared, no swords. Jiraiya was perched atop a tree. Observing the impending battle, he turned to see a battered Zabuza after sensing that someone else was observing the 2. Jiraiya asked, you got on her bad side? And noticed that he shook his head no. A shadow of pain appeared on Zabuza's jaw as he said, she just backhanded me. Jiraiya blew a whistle. Zabuza nodded and said, you got lucky if she only backhanded you. His eyes were serious, but he didn't want to offend that woman. But more importantly, Jiraiya noticed his stern expression as he raised his defenses while Zabuza dug into his pouch. Zabuza held out one of the books he wrote for Naruto's test, a limited edition water series, and asked, can I have your autograph? Jiraiya grabbed the book and pulled out his signing pen. Like they did during their sword fight, Naruto and Haku stood. They both heard Zabuza shouting out after they had been waiting for a long time, get on with it already. Both glared at Zabuza, causing him to stop talking. Haku had just taken a deep breath as he gathered something in the back of his throat when Naruto said, okay, let's get this over with. As Haku blew out a stream of snow and ice, Naruto let loose a pink-red flame known as Inferno. Both attacks hit the center, but Naruto's Inferno's heat caused Haku's snow stream to melt. Fire. Since Naruto gained wind and mastered fire, she is inadvertently using Inferno when she uses her dragon breath, which is the next level of flames. As the flames began to overwhelm Haku, he stepped in just in time to save himself from burns as the field started to freeze. Naruto noticed a shroud of mist and realized it wasn't intended to blind her. She also felt a sudden chill. Although her skin was unharmed, her clothes started to freeze, but she assumed that by now someone else would have frozen. Naruto remarked, not a bad technique. She inhaled deeply, exhaled a dense fog, and performed a 360 spin while expelling the fog. Haku sensed the heat from Naruto's fog and realized that it was preventing her from freezing. Boil. As she performed hand seals, Naruto remarked, "Boil style. Solid fog jutsu. I practiced that jutsu so much I don't need the seals to control this fog." Naruto yelled, "Boil style." Hidden in the fog jutsu. As the perilous fog that could melt and prevent Naruto from freezing started to spread across the field while he fought through the ice mist, the forest is fully soaked, which is advantageous for both fighters, as the mist and fog eventually cancel each other out. Together with Haku, Naruto performed a few hand seals. Water style. Water dragon missile with 2 heads. Ice dragon missile in ice style. One of Naruto's water dragons engaged Haku's ice dragon, which froze in place as the other dragon approached, but it also froze in front of Haku Naruto's side, knowing that the water would freeze together, and started performing more hand seals. Water style. The Fury of Leviathan. Haku saw a massive water dragon emerge behind Naruto, and since she had employed a boss technique, he would follow suit. Style of ice. Haya Rinmaru. The same type of ice dragon that he used with his sword appeared behind Haku, and Naruto assumed that this was a backup plan in case Haku lost his sword during a battle. "You don't need a sword to call forth your dragon?" Haku nodded as Naruto asked. Haku seemed pleased to have mastered one of Haya Rinmaru's techniques, saying, "Haya Rinmaru wanted me to learn his techniques without the sword, and I just mastered this a while ago." In a battle for supremacy, Leviathan and Haya Rinmaru flew at one another, but Leviathan, being a water dragon, froze Haya Rinmaru, however, broke through the frozen dragon and proceeded towards Naruto, who inhaled deeply before launching a massive tongue of pink-red flames at the ice dragon. Since the ice dragon was halted by the flames, Naruto halted her attack and maintained her vigilance, knowing that she had given Haku time to perform a jutsu. She was surrounded by water senbons, which actually hit her from all sides, but she poofed herself to oblivion. Knowing that he had exposed himself, Haku swore, "Damn." Haku turned to see Naruto holding white lightning, and he said, "Damn right." Riruhou. Haku is an ice clone, as evidenced by the fact that she broke into pieces of ice when Naruto struck her with the Railgun attack. As Haku fled, Naruto swore, "Damn, damn straight." Haku wrapped Naruto in a water prison as he turned around. Got ya. The girl was thrashing inside the water prison, trying to escape, but Haku put extra chakra into the water to keep her there. From what he could feel, the water prison was breaking apart, but with a little ice manipulation, the outside of the water prison froze, making it more difficult to escape. After a while, Haku let Naruto go as she willed the water out of her soaked clothes, and Naruto stopped flailing around and simply pouted before conceding defeat. Little Kuga approached Naruto, picked up the hatchling, and cuddled with it. "You won that round, but you won't win the next one." Naruto yelled as she turned away and pouted, leaving Haku perplexed when he heard the words, "Next one." Naruto gave Jiraiya a death glare and the little hatchling hissed when she said, "Alright you two, since we know who is smarter. Don't look at me like that. From what I've seen, he has the advantage with his ice jutsu. Her Boil and Inferno are a plus on her side, but she has less control with them. With her Inferno, she is on square one with manipulating Inferno because she can easily create a tornado of fire, whereas with Inferno, it is much harder. Her fog is mediocre as of right now. She still needs practice, and she hasn't started with ice manipulation yet." Naruto had to acknowledge that Haku has the advantage with his mastery of ice techniques. Tia had a difficult time explaining how cloud is an element. She only said that clouds are made of water vapors and that lightning is used to bring them all in a mass. It was too difficult to understand, but based on what she said, there is a cloud dragon that could assist her in manipulation when she is ready. Now that she has lightning, she can work with storm, which is wind and lightning, chaos, which is fire and lightning, and finally cloud. "Don't I have enough training?" Naruto sighed, acknowledging that she will require additional training, and she simply shook her head. Jiraiya shook his head, but Naruto yelled, "I need more training." "Are you not already sufficiently trained?" Jiraiya asked, and Naruto groaned in response, telling him that she had the same thought. "Well, I have to thank you." Both Naruto and Haku looked at Zabuza in confusion. "I just got myself a new informant." With Zabuza nodding, Haku questioned, "So you became his informant?" "I'm not able to escape the Hunter Nins forever." Boy, knowing that he had saved the three of them from death numerous times, Zabuza nodded and said, "Me and the brothers need help in avoiding them." "I guess I could help make sure you don't get yourselves killed when I'm gone," Haku said, missing Naruto's dejected expression and wishing he was still with them. "Do you have a way for us to contact each other, Naruto-chan?" Haku's question made Naruto tense. blush at the prefix of her name, and nod rapidly. She placed Kuga on the ground and performed hand seals while biting her thumb. Calling upon Jutsu, Tia appeared in her Liz-Ha dragon form, a real dragon as tall as Jiraiya, and her serpentine appearance flowed around Naruto as she eyed the boy in front of her. Naruto slammed her hand to the ground. Is this the dragon blood boy? As she examined him, the white dragon slid towards Haku and coiled around him. So Haya Rinmaru has been living in his descendants for the past 1,000 years, I see, Tia said, and Naruto nodded, not questioning why she had taken on a larger form or why he already knew he had dragon blood. The white serpentine curled around him, her claws probing him, and Haku felt a little uneasy. Tia flowed towards Naruto as she performed hand seals and summoned the summoning scroll, saying, if Haya Rinmaru chooses you, then I guess you are okay with having this power since he knows how to read people's character and soul. From the look in your eye, you want him to sign this scroll. Tia looked a little amused seeing her nod her head, not trusting her voice. From what I remember, you want to change something in here as well. As she took the scroll and opened it to reveal that her name had been changed from Uzumaki to Ryu, Naruto said, my name? You planned this, didn't you? As the dragon was examining its claws and filling them to give them a sharper appearance, she asked it. Do you have to inquire? As she blew tiny flames at her claws to remove the filled away remnants, Tia uttered those words. Naruto simply shook her head and rolled the unfolded scroll across the floor before approaching Haku. Since the boy has the Ice Dragon King in his veins, Tia nodded when Naruto said, you can use a summon to message me, and since you have Haya Rinmaru, you will be able to summon water and wind dragons without getting tested. Haku signed his name, Haku, on the scroll and nodded while biting his thumb. No family name? Haku shook his head no when Tia asked. After she rolled it up and threw it at Tia, Naruto remarked, okay, here are the hand seals. Calling upon Jutsu. As a massive cloud of smoke engulfed them, Naruto yelled, I'm twice as big as Jiraiya, and I'm sitting on top of a huge dragon that Jiraiya recognized as Ortalaji, the harbinger of storm. The wind boss looked over her back and saw the girl rubbing her neck sheepishly, and she remarked, so you actually summoned a dragon that isn't Tia? The dragon nodded in agreement as Naruto said, sorry, I never had a chance to summon dragons before. Orta laid down on the grass while Naruto sat on the hunch of her back. True, you never had a chance to summon us or needed our help fighting yet, but it is good to have some fresh air. As Orta examined the boy and applied pressure, Naruto called over, your turn, Haku. Once more, the attention made Haku uneasy, so he performed the hand seals. Calling upon Jutsu. After the smoke cleared, Haku was standing atop a massive dragon that Naruto identified as Kushala Diora. The dragon was 3 stories tall and appeared to be as fierce as ever. Called? As she surveyed the area, she noticed a male human on her back, but she could smell the dragon's scent in his veins. She glanced at the wind dragon boss and then back at the summoner, saying, summon me when I am needed to fight. The dragon then left the human realm for the dragon realm, and Haku gracefully landed on his feet. Orta looked over Haku and said, you'll have to forgive Kushala, she takes her position seriously. So you're Haya Rinmaru's heir. His heir? Haku and Naruto both blushed when they asked the same question at the same moment. Tia looked at Haku's sword and said, you do realize this sword is like a medium to control your power, right? He is the only Ice Dragon, and Haya Rinmaru chose him to take his place as Ice Dragon King. Well, when Haya Rinmaru gave you his power to give you dragon blood, but what he actually did is make you his heir? Tia asked the boy, who shook his head no, and she simply sighed. Haku simply considered it as Haya Rinmaru gave him advice as he grew up. As of now, he is giving you advice before he finishes his job with passing his knowledge to his heir before he passes on. As she continued to enjoy the cool grass and gentle breeze, Orta said, Haya Rinmaru-sama must be exhausted because he lived for a very long time. Anyway, try again, but when you try summoning, put more wind chakra into your summon and make it sharper and faster, rather than just regular wind chakra. Orta gave the new summoner instructions. Calling upon Jutsu. When it cleared, Haku was sitting on a familiar dragon that resembled Orta but was smaller than Jiraiya, taller, and had an extra foot. The dragon was light blue and appeared to be a glider. Haku followed instructions and was once more engulfed in smoke. Hey, I've been called in. The said dragon said out loud that sounded like a female and looked around and saw Orta. Oh, hey mother, you were also summoned? The dragon's question sounded enthusiastic. How is your younger brother doing? It's good to see you, Oikaze. Orta questioned the wind dragon, which focuses more on speed than attacks. Oikaze, forgetting she had her summoner on her back, said, I'm not sure little is the right word mother, he is 3-4 times my size and has been destroying the place ever since you were called for duty. It's good to catch up, mother, but I have to get back to make sure that idiot doesn't destroy the home. Oikaze glanced back at her summoner and said, summon me if you need to get somewhere in a heartbeat. Haku nodded as Oikaze poofed out of existence, and Haku landed on his feet. You only need to slow down and dull down your wind chakra if you want to call forth Jinpu. As Haku stood up with Naruto on her back, Orta said, as much as I like to be summoned, I have to get back and plan for the girls' training. Orta turned to face Naruto and said, training in storm is going to be harder than wind, so you better be ready. He is more on the destruction side rather than speed, and you already know how to summon Kushala, so that is about it. If you just want to summon a messenger dragons, then use less wind chakra. Well, I'll see you later, Orta said, as Naruto moaned, knowing that she would fall asleep studying politics, and she discovered that she could fall asleep in the mind that Tia told her she was mentally exhausted. Leviathan said she is going to start teaching you ice, and Jin mentioned something about learning how to read people's expressions and predict the human mind. Tia poofed out of existence, saying, since I am not needed, I'll head back now. Everyone became uneasy as the space fell into an awkward silence. All right. As much as I like company, I need to take Naruto to finish her training, Jiraiya said, breaking the silence, for which Haku and Naruto were thankful. Naruto nodded, aware that she still needed to complete sealing and her final element that she would learn from Jiraiya. Thinking about the twist in his books based on Naruto's tests, Jiraiya said, I'll leave you two alone. She won't mind if I add a twist to the story. Sensibly, Zabuza left the area and went to get Maizu and Gozu, the demon brothers. As the silence grew, Naruto stood motionless, unsure of what to say. Both of them stopped and blushed when she added the prefix to Haku's name, Haku-kun, Naruto-chan Iya, at the same moment. You firsta, they both said at the same moment, which made them blush more deeply. Haku said, I'll go first. Naruto blushed and nodded. Do you want to go out later? As Naruto went completely red when she was asked out in the future, Haku asked with a slight flush. She nodded quickly, saying, well, I'll see you later then. Haku approached Naruto, kissed her on the cheek, and then pursued Zabuza. Now that steam was dripping off her skin, Naruto was completely flushed. Kuga looked up at her mistress, perplexed by the strange look on her master's face, and cocked her head to the side. Initially, she wanted to kill that guy, then she became intrigued by him, then curious about him, then she wanted to fight him, and finally, she was acting strangely around him. It wasn't the uneasy feeling she gets when people are around her, but rather a feeling she had never experienced before, and it confused her a little, but she knew one thing. She desires to be close to him. She picked up the little hatchling and headed towards Jiraiya to complete her training from Jiraiya after shaking her head to clear her mind and to stop blushing.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.